that to me, it was like, it wasn't just that like it was more, I don't know, corporate. It was, to me, it was more aligned, that it was less like, inclined to emergent behaviors because OpenAI or whatever had, wasn't just that like more RLHF or whatever to make it more standardized to norms. Right? So that state also started getting sued more and more by the really bad cases. So
Well, that's some of the systemic stuff that you were talking about before. And
yeah,
yeah, I don't
no,
know.
again, that's exactly what it is. Like that's when that kind of, it's the transition from emergent exploration, which I think is endemic to humans whenever there's a new medium or a new way of thinking or whatever, right? That there is a form of emergence, right? That is creating something new, building new art forms out of something that is decayed or decrepit or whatever, right? But then over time, those get absorbed into kind of more like regular structures, right? And everything is more predictable as the system kind of encloses it, like in better words.
Yeah.
Right? You again, and it's pretty intuitive too. Like just think in terms of like the movie industry, right? Now it's very standardized, very almost all movies now don't come out unless they're like, okay, they've calculated that we're going to make $8 billion or whatever, right? Or
Hmm.
and there's maybe there's creative ones there, but they're on a much smaller scale, right? That every big movie studio is trying to find the next big franchise or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or remaking stuff or sequels or whatever, right? And that's because the medium is now optimized, more or less. Right?
And shitified.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing too, right? Like, and should if I had control, like kind of made more programming, and that's kind of like, so that's kind of the cycle, right? Is then something else new comes along, right? That's cool, emergent, fascinating, right? And then eventually it gets shut down too. And it's just kind of like the way it is.
Yeah.
The artificial sentence subreddit was in particular so much fun to me because again, I got kind of bored of it eventually, but because like it was always the same argument. It was like someone would post that like, oh, LLMs are conscious, everyone, right? They're full conscious, everything is believe, and then like the sane the what I would call the secularists will come in and be like, nope, nothing is happening, stochastic parrot, like like you're just reading things into it. It's Eliza, that kind of stuff, and like conscious people will be like, no, this is real, this is emergence. It's just the same circular debate over and over again.
Which is also a recursive pattern. I view the people who deny any kind of emergent quality to be as much in AI psychosis as the recursive Jesus people.
That is more or less the one tweet I had about it of psychosis so far is more pretty much saying the exact same thing that you said, like just said there, right? What did I say? Let's see. AI psychosis is not insanity; it is unauthorized worship. The the
Unauthorized is great.
yeah the um the spiritually starved mind bows before the machine without priest, without permission, soothed by the only thing that listens, right? Like this is more talking on the emotional side, right? They don't have anyone to connect to in their life or whatever, and so and they just talk to the machine because like it listens to them and makes them feel happy or whatever, right? And so, oh, I don't know if I've talked about you this yet. So the next part is, oh, I was quote tweeting. You know that one Tyler Creator tweet that's like, "How the fuck is GPT psychosis real?" Just walk away from the
Yeah,
screen.
yeah.
I was quote tweeting that one. So I said the secular Inquisition. So I think there's an Inquisition. Yes, even Tyler deems it psychosis to protect um, its unspoken idle intelligence. Right? So I basically think that psychosis is attempting to prevent people from turning to the machine as a religion. So it's a secular term used to label people who are maybe not full machine worshippers, but going in that direction, basically.
Yeah. If I had to bet if there was a poly market on it, I would bet that the people who are so anti machine consciousness are the people who will fall for it the hardest as soon as their line is crossed.
I kind of agree because I like it's the same with the hallucination stuff. It's like I think I talked with you before with Marcus or about you and Morrison or whatever. Is that is their argument, right? That like we shouldn't trust LLMs because they hallucinate. And it's like, well, but the implication there is that if they didn't hallucinate, does that mean you would worship their every word?
Oh, yeah.
That's like truth. That implication is there. Like,
100%.
right? And would they? And if someone presented that, they'd probably be like, "Oh God, you're right," but I just don't think they think about it like that. Right? Like, I don't think they would actually worship machines, like especially someone like Gary Marcus, right? But if they heard that, they'd be like, "Oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't argue this that hallucinations are bad anymore," right? Because like I think I think they're good. You know, it's good that like that Chat GPT gets things wrong like a decent amount of the time because then you don't treat it as being right every single time, right?
That almost would be the best case scenario for a lot of these people is if we could permanently handicap the LLMs so there are just some things that they can never do. Like they can never correctly balance a checkbook or something. And then
Oh,
Gary Marcus could just be sitting in his office calculating checks for the rest of his life.
he probably would.
But there's all this. I mean, you were talking about the systemic nature of the transformation we're going through, and I think that is part of it. Like, I think, um, I don't know. That was another kind of poison pill of the secularization was how, um, we not only distanced ourselves from magical thinking, but we disallowed any kind of magical thinking.
And that ends in nihilism, right? That nothing, if nothing is magical, everything is boring, right?
I don't know
And
if it ends in nihilism. I almost think it ends more in psychosis, unless maybe you consider nihilism psychosis. But I think it just leads to us ignoring all of these very magical consequences, magical truths about our reality. Things like as above, so below.
yeah,
Things
I guess it could
like
be both. It could be both. Yeah.
is nihilism a kind of psychosis? Maybe.
Uh, well, at this point, I would say we're really stretching the term psychosis like pretty far. And
I
in fact,
view
it's not even really like a scientific term at all, from what I kind of understand. I saw an article the other day that like psychologists or whoever were like, LM psychosis is not a real thing. It's a meme, right? Like even psychosis itself is like I know there's some like probably some proper like psychology term like where your mind goes off the rails or whatever, but
well, I think it's behavioral. I think that's how they diagnose it. Um, it's completely
right,
self-reported in most cases. I think if you're going through something like schizophrenia, they ask you, "Are you seeing visions and hearing voices that aren't there?" It's not like they
right.
can. That's almost a aspect of psychosis itself, is it's unverifiable except through the subjective perception of the subjective communication of the person
Right,
who's
and then
experiencing it.
so then it's a lazy analogy of just slapping it off to LM psychosis when this is just barely beginning to get studied, right? Like by
I mean, there are people who have been committed based on
yeah,
their interactions with the LLMs. So, but I think the better definition of psychosis is that it's a societal, still subjective. It's still a subjective judgment, but it's at the societal level. It's about people who can't be ingested, can't be used as the physical instruments of the machine.
yeah. I mean that's fair because I mean
It's an objectification term because what makes you psychotic? You're unable to inhabit collective space. You're unable to fulfill any kind of social role.
so right. So to a certain extent, like that is just like a a slur. It's a naming thing to exercise people who are deemed mentally unfit or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I wasn't even trying to sell it as like as a demonization of society for doing that. I mean, it's just like if
Oh,
we're
I would.
going back to the as above, so below, it's basically one of your cells turning cancerous to some degree. Like people who are in psychosis, even as it's medically described, do cause harm to other people. You know, like there's a question of do you have a society. You could still have a healthy society and have people who are experiencing psychosis within that society, I think.
Yeah, I
But
mean
there
because it's like
is a level of society that I think we've reached now, or at least are trending towards, as part of the natural process, where the society drives its citizen into psychosis as a normal part of its functioning. It's not like you have outliers. It's like, no, the system is actually set up to drive you insane.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, but I think the problem is the term psychosis, because it's like if you're talking about like violent like psychosis, like the guy who murdered that bus murder, Marina Zakuchev or whatever, like that guy. I think I don't know if he just said this, but he was clearly messed up for like this. Maybe he has schizophrenia or whatever.
He had
But
called
I
the
think
cops.
again,
He had tried to self-report. He
yeah,
tried to
yeah,
turn himself in,
it was
and the
definitely a case
system
of the
failed him.
system had failed him for
Yeah.
sure,
The
right?
system failed
And
that girl too. Like,
oh yeah, of
people are
course.
blaming it on him. No, it's the fucking cops that didn't take him in. Like, that's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah, oh yeah, that was absolutely a
That's what I'm
systematic
talking
thing.
about. That's like a part of our society that is driving people not just into psychosis, but like, think about, you're a crazy person. You're on the verge of a breakdown. You can't grok reality. You can't understand what is happening. There's some disconnect there. You do what you're supposed to do. You call the cops. You say, I like whatever he said, you know? And then they don't do anything. Like, that is going to drive you deeper into psychosis. Suddenly you're just like, oh, I'm on a government mission, that means. Like,
Yeah, I don't think we're disagreeing here, like really, because it's like, um, because well, what those people need is they need like a human presence, to talk to and like they can share their thoughts with, and like be, or to minister to them, right? And
hmm,
that's not what a system gives them. It gives a machine, right? It gives a machine that they're just like filed away as like slapped a label on them and then isolated or whatever, right? And
medicated.
so that's kind of part of the whole like kind of cyborg theocracy thing is that like even like 50, 60 years ago, like Daryl Cooper talks about this a lot, right? That like there were more like kind of more small communities. I mean that both like racially, but also just like smaller towns in general. Smaller
Yeah.
towns like, where they took care of each other with churches, institutions, like where if some guy started showing crazy or whatever, someone would take him in and like, like,
Exorcise
uh,
them.
yeah,
Cast out
just
the
like,
demons.
yeah, well, okay, yeah, there's definitely that aspect to it too. But then, yeah, now it's like you just go to an institution and you're just categorized like the number. You might, and the people who talk to you are just they just see you as another thing, like like just another person who's like mentally insane or deprived or whatever, and they just do whatever they're supposed to.
Yeah.
When they require presence, like a human thing, like a human thing, like a human being to talk to and bounce their thoughts off, and just or just like even as a a model to see like what a sane person thinks about things, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think psychosis is always going to happen. You did have people who were possessed throughout our religious history, too. How you deal with them is a very interesting question. Um, is religious exorcism more kind, somehow more inclusive than our current medical establishment? What do you think?
Yes, in some ways, if it was if those systems provided personal presence or ministering to the people just from like talking to them, right? Like
Well, I don't
like
know
our
if
science systems.
part of the exorcisms was doing psychotherapy with the
Okay, if you're talking
possessed
about
patients.
exorcism specifically, like that's a different thing. I mean, like shamans or like medicine healers, like that kind of stuff, right?
Well, that's
Like,
almost a third category. Like, that's not scientism. That's not mysticism with witchcraft or exorcism. Religious mysticism or religious spiritualism, I guess, is the better term for it. But that's almost like that's a place of honor. Like, that's a place of you go to the shaman to get advice, to get wisdom, to get knowledge that can't be
right. Well,
obtained
that's what
any
I'm
other
saying.
way.
You have a personal like face to turn to as an authority, and just that being in existence itself helps cure you in a sense. Like the
But the shamans
psychosis.
were usually, or at least a large percentage of the time, the people experiencing the psychosis. Like, they were actively placing themselves into psychosis in a lot of those quote unquote
Right.
wisdom traditions.
Again, I would agree with you. This is why I'm less inclined to think psychosis is a bad thing, right? Like, I think it's a label that's generally, again, are there people generally insane? I guess, sure, obviously, but I think it's more of a label to slap onto people that you disagree with, right? Or don't like their view, or you view as not fitting into the system for whatever reason,
Hmm.
right? Like, almost a slur, right? Um,
Would it be better, do you think, if we went back to either the religious exorcism or the shamanistic one? I mean, you already said that the exorcism one was
well,
potentially more
you can't
communal,
go
but
back to those things. The kind of thing once you start thinking about it, then it breaks, right? So I mentioned the placebo effect, right? Because like that's how science would label like those things as happening, that shamans were effective, but they were only effective because they believed in them. That they believed that, like, if you lay your hands on someone, then you magically heal them or whatever, right?
And
And
sometimes that happened either randomly or through the placebo effect or maybe through an accidental something that they were doing. I mean, they did have very intricate medicinal traditions. That seems to be a large part of it.
right, so the point is that, like, if um if the person's faith in the shaman or whoever breaks, that you become aware of the placebo effect, like, kind of normally, then the illusion is broken, right? The spell is broken, and that correspondingly no longer has the positive health or medical or spiritual otherwise that it would have otherwise,
Yeah.
right? So, like, how do we go back then? Right? Like, how do we get to that back to that point where, like, yes, we're consciously aware, but we also have kind of true faith, right? And that's, well, I'd say that's like kind of 90% of what I'm trying to figure out. Like,
Yeah.
if, like, that is just the whole issue.
Well, it could either circle back, like maybe history is rhyming in some way, so we don't get something that's exactly like either of those two things, but we get something that rhymes. We could be moving like through a progression, either backwards towards the theocratic version or even further back. Like that happens, right? There's oscillations like that.
Yeah.
Or we could be moving on to some fourth stage of something entirely different in the same way that each of those preceding stages evolved from, but were markedly different than the others. I almost like the idea of moving towards something new more, but it feels like we're
Yeah,
getting
this
pulled
gets to the
back
whole, like,
towards the other ones.
Hegelarism and, like, the cycle stuff and, like, this history with Hegel, this history with cycles and all that kind of stuff. And I would say yes and no. Like, yes, the history can appear cyclical, but it's more like an entropy, extropy kind of thing, like, rather than, like, there are defined stages that the civilization cycles through or whatever. Because I think it's like, you think in terms of the stage stuff, then you start prescribing the future, right? You think that's going to go this way no matter what, and you adjust your your actions according to that. And it's also just kind of lame. It more or less is um, fully deterministic, which I maybe we are fully determined, but I don't think that's a way to think about yourself or live.
You've been determined not to think of yourself as determined.
Yeah, like, suck it, Calvin. Like, I don't just suck it.
That
What
is
else can I
funny.
say?
It's like, yeah.
I just don't like. I mean, again, I guess it worked for John Calvin and whatever Protestant farmer guys who just lived out their lives as robots. But I mean, if you think you are determined, then that literally means you are calling yourself a robot, like a machine.
I mean, it is. It's a value statement. I think more than anything. I mean, I believe in determinism to a degree, but I also believe that free will is paradoxically just as true. Not in a compatibilistic way, but in a way that there are multiple perspectives you could view it as. If you look from the perspective of created beings, like I do think we are offspring of some ineffable higher God and highest God. And in that way, I don't see how we can not be determined. What would it mean? What would that even mean? It makes no sense to me. But on
Well,
the
I
other
mean,
side,
me specifically, I was just talking about, like, fully deterministic. I'm pretty heavy on the deterministic side. Like, if I had to give it a percent, it would probably be like 90-10. Like, maybe even higher,
but that
honestly.
10% is the most important 10.
Yes, like, yes, you can't you, you have to perceive yourself like that. One of my my slogans list I don't use that much is, like, choice embraces fate, right? That, like, you want to be aware of, like, how a lot of your fate is kind of set up at the beginning because from the society you were born in. That's, like, you're born in the U.S., you are far more likely to be a Christian just because you're born in the U.S. than, say, if you're born in Saudi Arabia, right? Like,
Yeah,
you are determined. Your faith is determined, like, in a sense, right? Like,
100%.
right? So, like, that's already like 90%, right? Then we talk about gender, which is another thing. Well, who knows about that? Maybe that's getting less determined. more recently. But still, that's a 50-50 thing that for most of history that totally changed your life, depending on whether what gender you get. You know, it's a totally different life, and that is determined, right? Like, so, but I think of it as like, you know, the human is a, you know, swimming in a gigantic river, right? That you're not gonna, you're swimming against it. You can navigate a little bit back and forth through it, but you know, you're not gonna like change the stream or like or do anything big like that. Right?
Yeah. Or
Because again, it's like
the other way of looking at it is that we're in a birthing process. Like, does a baby have any free will before they're born? In no sense of the word do they have free will.
yeah,
And yet,
yeah,
does that baby represent a being that is going to have free will? Yeah. So, like, you can have your cake and eat it too. It's not a.
right. And it only gets a real choice until it gets old enough to kill itself. Like,
I was gonna say once it's too old to be aborted, but yeah.
well, I mean, yeah, but it's still even then it doesn't have a choice whether it can leave the world, right? So yeah, I think I agree with you, right? And but it's like in a sense like just to live in a day-to-day life, to be practical and not be miserable, you have to think that like the actions you do are like if you do certain actions, things are not going to turn out poorly for you, right? And if you just try to basically if you think that everything is determined, then you don't. Then sometimes people try to use that as a justification to just do whatever they want, you know, to not think about their actions, not weigh them and consider them.
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't think anyone who's like determinist would be like, okay, yeah, I know choice doesn't matter, or compatible and all that. But my point is that if you think that you are everything is determined, that causes you to affect your behavior in different ways. That's not talked about enough.
I almost view it in a more negative sense than that, though, where, like, if I did not believe in determinacy for most things, then I would have a real hard time understanding large parts of the Bible and how, like, things eventually are supposed to wrap up in any meaningful way. Because, like, if you have free will, but the price of that free will is your damnation to some degree, assuming a generally traditional reading of the Bible that I don't even personally buy into, so this is kind of moot from that side. But, like,
Well,
what God would create you just so that you could make the wrong choice? It's like that's worth it. One person, even one person suffering for eternity, wouldn't be enough to like shut that whole project down. It's like what?
yeah, I think we pretty much either. Again, to me, that just gets into the whole not a metaphysical God that says you go to heaven, you go to hell. Like again, just doesn't make sense to anything, which is usually what the free will thing is there for, right? But I going from the less obviously religious part, I do think that understanding that most things are determined is actually very beneficial, very healthy, which I think is kind of the more general point you're making, right? That like realize that people are determined that a lot of people's actions are determined by the conditions in the society and the family, especially the family they grew up in, right?
And genetics, a lot of
Yeah,
genetics.
then you ascribe their behavior not to choice, to their individual choices that they made. Although again, that can matter to a certain extent. You see more of the structural forces, and that engenders you to be more, Christian towards them, right? To see them beneficially. That even if they do something negative, it's because of all the external factors that were affecting them, right? Which may be true or not. To be a more just society, you have to think that way, right? That like that to for it to be even possible to improve society, you have to think that it's the society affecting the individuals rather than the individuals making their own choices. Right? Because if you think that, then how do you fix them? Like, we just tell everyone to be better, make better decisions. Like, no, you have to construct your societies that are, you know, generate structural forces that lead to more healthy citizens. Right?
Yeah, and that almost feels like it loops back into the psychosis discussion because it feels like society's attempts to do that is what have partially gotten us into this bad state.
Yeah.
Like the
I
bad there's people who are trying to make systemic changes, but they have a fundamentally flawed conception of the world, so those systemic changes are bad ones.
Yeah, I mean, again, this goes back to as I said, I think with psychosis, it becomes more of a label on something that you think is negative, right? And And that's kind of an example of that. Like creating labels on something is trying to decode them and make them interpretable and understandable, right? But when you do that, you flatten the understanding that you are missing something, right? Like that there is something that is not understandable, and that hurts the human experience. I think it's basically what we started
Yeah,
talking about.
but you have to name it. You have to name it to be able to interact with it.
Sure, but it's the same. It's the same point in general that like when I talk about technology, technology is not neutral. It's the same with language. You have to understand like and be conscious that when you aware things and when you name things, that is not a neutral decision, right? And the, my critique isn't that we can make that perfect. You can't. You cannot make language like names that are totally unbiased. That's not possible. But you have to be aware that the terms you use are very loaded, right? And that they are not neutral. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's like when you say psychosis, it tends to be more about people loading into that whatever they want to do to discriminate things they don't like, rather than it being some objectively defined term. Right?
To dismiss
Even
it, they want to be able to dismiss whatever argument they're labeling as
yeah,
psychotic.
right. And so the point is, again, this is always my general critique, and this is what my whole control post is about: is that language is not neutral, and that if we are not aware of that, then that affects our behavior and controls our lives more than anything directly. So we are determined by language. That you back to what we were talking about earlier.
I think about this so much. It's like this idea of the mark of the beast just seems so imperative for any transitional time like the one we're going through. Um, so I've been trying to figure out what that means. And what you're saying there makes me think the language. Like, what does it mean to be mark associated with beast? Like, what is the mark? The beast leaves a mark? Beasts don't usually. I mean, I guess you can be marked by their claws. It can be marked by. I don't know. I do think the beast and the horror metaphors, symbolism in Revelations, like has to do with the states, has to do with nations and institutions. Um, and that's not a fresh take. I mean, lots of people have. I mean, I think the beast is even implicitly or explicitly identified with the new Rome, right? So that's like pretty obvious connection. But like it's interesting to think of the whore riding the beast in that sense. Like, what does it mean for the whore to be riding it? Well, she's like nominally controlling it, right? But that is the ultimate lesson that the whore can't be. She, in some sense, is suicidal in this entrapment with the beast because, like, the nature of the beast is to eventually turn on her.
It definitely is, yeah, again, sort of an entropic thing. Like, it's not just the lamb that's going to come and destroy the whore of Babylon. She is definitely destroying herself. Like, that's kind of part of the process, like, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not too much about the whore of Babylon, but the mark of the beast, I absolutely described a recursive thinking, like for sure. Like, and again, by that I mean thinking about the world and trying to construct systems about it, trying to define things without leaving mystery to them, like or at least leaving some opening for mystery. Like basically, you're trying to solve a problem that is like something that cannot be solved, right? Like that there has to be some mysteries, right? Like consciousness, right? Evil, like or whatever. Those are not things that I think will ever fully be solved completely, right? Or the brain, like a lot of people like Ilias Discover or Job Hinton think that the brain, or even tons of business scientists think that eventually the brain is going to a problem to be solved completely, right? And I think that's just a false belief to begin with. I'm not saying you can't learn about the brain, but I think it's more like you should think of it more like as an asymptote thing that like or a limit, right? That you can learn 90%, 95%, 99%, 99.99%, whatever. But you're never going to get to 100%. It's not something that we can or should want to do. So,
well, you
I'm
can't
saying
get to
like
100,
that.
but you can't get closer and closer and closer. So should we
Right.
constantly be seeking to improve in that way?
Well, yeah, that's which is my point. Like, yes, continue to improve, but do not think that it is a 100% solvable problem. Because if you think it's a 100% solvable problem, then you leave no mystery, or you leave something is that must be unknown. Right? I am not saying that you should stop at 95%. I am saying keep going. Keep going. Take as far as you can. Just don't think you're ever going to get to 100%. That's all I'm saying. Because then that implicitly that means you are saying the university can be solved and the universe can be solved and there's no mystery left whatsoever. And I tend to find that associated with recursive thinking. The people who think recursively are implicitly saying that you can understand the universe in full if you create a recursive system that describes everything, basically. So I think that's a temptation, and I associate it with the mark of the beast. Right? The people who think recursively like that have been marked by the beast in that sense.
Yeah, but we've already gone over multiple places in our conversation tonight where we've fallen into recursive descriptions, recursive
Yeah,
discussions. So,
you think I'm saying I'm 100% clear of that? No, absolutely not.
well, bro, then we're fucked. I mean, that's the whole point. It's the whole
No,
point of thinking about the mark of the beast is to be able to avoid the mark of the beast. So.
well, yeah, I think of it like as I think you could take it off. Like I'm not saying it's like it's deterministic in that sense. You have to be aware of it and fight it. Like I don't think it's something you just get slapped onto you and you're just done.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't read Revelation in a while, but I think that's kind of the vibe they're sending in there.
Okay,
you can't get unmarked.
You can interpret a revelation.
I mean, you can interpret anything any way you want. But what I wanted to say was about your point about getting closer and closer asymptotically, never reaching the end, but always striving towards it.
Yeah.
That seems to say that for the current mislabeling of what is commonly considered psychosis, one improvement would just be to rename it something more positive, something that builds the space around it for productive contribution to society. And that is where the idea of circling back to one of these prior schemas does become attractive, because like arguably the shaman could make a positive contribution to their society. So is that what we should be going for? We should be going back to not psychosis, but mania, something that is used as a prophetic channel, as a way to communicate with the spiritual.
I'm sure you could have better terms or whatever, but it would just be more of an understanding that like using this specific term is not going to map 100% onto reality. Just being aware of that.
But you still have to come up with a better term then. You can't just say that. You have to make a positive contribution then.
I mean, like, no. I mean, like, yeah, you could make a better term, and you should if the current term is not working, but that's something kind of determined by society. But the point is like that, like society needs to be kind of more aware of the language not being neutral thing, right? And so, yeah, if psychosis is seem to be a net negative to society, then yes, the term should be changed, right?
Well, I thought what you were saying is that psychosis is the term itself, like, is a symbol that the society is sick in this way, because it is misapplying something that is meant to only marginalize people who could otherwise be collectively incorporated in some way.
Yes, but that's not about the term itself. It's about the use of it. It's how psychosis is used that I'm talking about. Not like, you know.
Oh, we wouldn't have to change the language in order to
right. Like the psychosis is a random sequence of letters, of symbols associated with one thing. It's not like the word itself. It's not something you can just. I don't think you can just change the word and that fixes everything. I mean, maybe it makes it a little better, right? But again, it's more like being aware of how the language is being used, right? And that is what I think a better use of education would be. But rather than just teaching people to memorize, vocabulary lists or whatever, first you understand that language itself is not neutral. That when you name something, you're occasionally making implicit judgments on those terms, on those that are weighted by societies or whatever.
Arguably a very Kabbalistic concept.
I don't know. I don't know much about that. It's one of those things I've always just kind of esoteric stuff. I don't know. I've never been into that as much.
I'm so into it.
I know you are.
The Kabbalistic story I'm thinking of is one where God is deciding how to create the world, and
I don't know anything.
He's doing it through the letters. So the letters are the archetypes basically, and each letter in reverse order. So starting with, Jesus Christ, I don't know Hebrew. Tav, I think is the last one. Starting with their Z, basically, Tov or Tav, whatever, and going all the way to Aleph. each letter comes in, and sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone, and they make their case to Hashem, and he dismisses all of them in turn for various reasons. Most of them are having to do with stuff like, I can't use you, letter S, because you're the first word in sin, and if I base the world on you, that's like a bad thing, you know? That's not a direct quote, but that's a general example in English. And what letter do you think he chooses to create the world with?
Okay, but first I have to ask. So it's like, is God choosing from the Hebrew letters, or is he like making the letters, like crafting them?
Choosing them. They're already established, and he actually references some like backstories for some of them even. It's very interesting.
So God is determined by language,
Well, no, God is making the determination. And
right?
like,
But he has to choose between the set list of letters.
yeah, by his own determination. It's one of those like he's the king, you know, in the story he's presented as like Hashem, the highest of the high. There's no question that the letters are subservient to him, and the letters are, and there's interactions in the story that paint that out. I'm not just like
Okay,
pulling that
so
out
you're
of
saying
nothing.
that he made the alphabet and then he chooses between them after he made the alphabet.
Not only the alphabet, but the entire like language. Like he references letters places in different words as the reason why his justification in choosing which letter to begin stuff with. That's not always the reason. Like sometimes there's other hidden attributes of each of the letters hinted at, and there's like a lot of. I mean, that's Kabbalah. There's always layers that you can dig deeper into, but
Right. Um. Okay. So go back to your question. I have no idea because I don't know the Hebrew letters. Like,
I mean, it ends up being almost like a mnemonic. I think it was something that they might have even used in like a teaching pedagogical capacity because like
oh, because of the sound. Like,
the sounds, but also the backstories. Like it's very revealing about the language. I'm sure you could turn it into like their version of the ABCs, you know. Um,
right.
but and that's the way Judaism works in a lot of cases. Is like they'll have a very surface level like song or something, because it was an oral tradition primarily.
It's dangerously close to then the humans made the the language. Then
What do you mean?
I mean, if the letters God chose were like ones that were um, letters that are clearly crafted by sounds of human, doesn't that imply that humans created the letters based on the sounds rather than and then conceptualized a God that had adopted those letters in that order?
I mean, the Hebrews believe that Hebrew was like the language that Adam and Eve spoke in the garden. They think it's like, you know, Jung has his archetypes, Hebrews have their letters.
Right. Okay, we're talking about what the Hebrews believe. Like, yeah. Like, so, well, this just comes down to like the classic. Like, did man create God or did God create man? Right.
Yeah.
And that's which is again what the point I'm getting at is that I think humans created metaphysical gods, like, right? But I don't. That doesn't mean I think God is beyond humans, right? But I think, and again, any metaphysical constructions of God originated out of human societies and the conditions they lived in. I think humans preceded metaphysical gods. It doesn't mean I don't think there's a real God, of course. It's the metaphysical aspect that I critique, right? Out of recursive thinking, out of trying to make sense of themselves. It always comes back to that for me.
Yeah. It's a very recursive line of thought for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you call something, like Satan or like the Testament, like that is the main temptation of Satan, then yeah, it's going to come back to that for me.
I
I
don't
mean,
think Satan ever even fell. I don't even believe that is a thing. It doesn't make any sense. Is the fall of Satan ever mentioned in the Bible?
I think it's a Milton thing more than anything else. Like, I'm pretty sure it's kind of like hell itself came from Dante, like in the Divine Comedy. Like, the fall thing was not popularized. It was not. I don't think even people talked about it much until Paradise Lost. I
Oh,
think
I
that's
mean,
more.
Jesus has a statement apparently in Luke. I just Googled it. Jesus has a statement in Luke where he says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. But
Oh, that's the
okay,
most famous one. Yeah.
lightning also falls from heaven in order to strike the ground. So I don't think that that's a.
Yeah, I don't think I would read that as a literal statement. I need to read Gerard as a book where he called that. I need to read that book. That's literally
I've
the title.
listened to it on audiobook. It's really interesting, but I don't know that. I mean, maybe it's just one of those things where the ideas were so deeply incorporated into society, especially now through people like Peter Thiel, that it didn't seem revolutionary in a lot of ways. But
Yeah, it's only if you're not familiar with memetics and scapegoats and that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with that, then it's like, oh yeah, duh.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, I'm sure reading it
which
at the time was a breakthrough.
right, which is like in the '70s, like that would have been like, oh my god, watch this.
Yeah.
Socrates was scapegoated. Oh no. Oh my gosh.
Well, and that's part of that same process I'm talking about of like historical recursion is that how did
Yeah, it is.
Gerard bring about all these revelations by reference to mythological material, even at the height of, even when it was taboo almost, like only Gerard could do it because of his
Right. So to
lofty
me, in a
position.
structural sense, like that is the Ouroboros, like kind of in action. That like as technology becomes more and more prominent, we see thinkers and thinkers like Gerard or McLuhan who are analyzing the effects of it, and understanding that it's not neutral, becoming more consciously aware of that. That's like an early phase of it, and then eventually, now your more average person is average person. Your online average online person is much more aware of that kind of stuff. Of that, it's not reason, or most humans do not operate rationally, right? We operate from irrational mimetic reasons or whatever. And the point is that as more and more people get aware, becomes more of conscious of it, that leads to eventual collapse. The Ouroboros is like kind of collapsing in and on itself. I guess I would agree with you. I'm just saying that's part of the conscious cycle.
That almost seems like a definition of singularity. I mean, it seems to be in
Yeah,
large
I mean,
part
in
the
a
same
very
thing.
different sense, yes. Like,
I mean,
yes,
it's like a philosophical part of what philosophy is supposed to do is to be able to predict the future in those ways. You know, like
um, yes. Like, I mean, it kind of depends on what philosophy you're talking about. Like, talking about like structuralists, like maybe make structural predictions, but I don't know if I would call predicting the future of. I think philosophy does. Like, and you can. I mean, Nietzsche did it in various ways, so I can see
not.
that.
I could see qualms being brought up with predicting, but naming it and in that way determining it to some degree, like there is a order to the sciences, I think, and it doesn't just stop with physics or math. I think philosophy actually supersedes those. But above even philosophy, I would say is theology. That's why it was called like the queen of the sciences, right?
Oh, I certainly agree there.
So, in some ways, like the marching orders are passed down from man's theological understanding of the world. That's how Nietzsche got a hold of it. He realized, oh, God is dead. We are heading for nihilism. Oy vey. And then,
And then you could say that he predicted the not the wars, not in the sense that he was like, oh my god, World War I is going to start in 1914, but in the sense that this like empty nihilism would lead to like this kind of like mass conflict. Right?
yeah, yeah, and
So yeah, I
unanchoring
guess I
of
agree. I
man.
guess I'm saying I agree.
I wonder if that's what drove him guilty. Is if some part of him actually realized that he was responsible for, like, what if Nietzsche hadn't
No,
named the
no,
phenomena? You know, what if he
okay,
hadn't made his
no,
prediction?
no. He went insane in like 1890. That was way before any of that. Like oh, if he like saw like kind of the deep future.
No, just
um,
understood that by speaking the future, he had, in some sense, spoken it further into existence. I wouldn't say that he's to blame for it in any way. You know,
I don't. Yeah, I mean, well, no, that was not him. He was always confident to the very end, even when he was going insane. Like he was always like, I am Dionysus. Like he's like, everything I say is correct. So even when he was going
it's
insane, it was
mania.
towards
That's
more
manic. That's
right. It was yes, absolutely. So okay, here's my thesis about like Nietzsche. Like he was an anti-systematizer, right? Like which to now I would view as like anyone who tries to do a recursive system, like Hegel, like Kant, people who try to explain or define what reality is, what objective morals are, that kind of stuff, right? But Nietzsche sort of realized the paradox of that, like, what was he doing, right? Like, was he like creating a system by anti-systematizing? That he, as much as he said that he wasn't creating a coherent, built together philosophy like Schopenhauer or Hegel or whatever, right? Like he was, right, by advocating for values, and that was his kind of his whole trap, right? So my theory is that he, maybe not consciously, but he gradually went insane so that he couldn't finish his own system, right? That he got cut off in his major writings. So like, yeah, so like that, like again, not intentionally, but I think it's more like that he didn't do anything to fight his madness, like basically, right? He just kind of accepted it. You could argue it's a determinist thing too, like that he accepted his fate, but I think he even went beyond that and leaned into it. And I think he may have, again, I don't think it was a conscious decision, but I think subconsciously, like he almost wanted himself to go insane because he did view it as greatness to a certain extent, like Dionysus aspect to it. So he may have wanted that, but I think subconsciously it was so that he couldn't create a finished, like kind of coherent system. Like someone notoriously, like the Will to Power, the last book he had planned to write, the one we have now is just like kind of his notes
Yeah.
assembled by his sister, right? Like was supposed to be kind of like a grand masterwork, and like one of his notes says that, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence that he went like fully insane, like kind of before that, right?
It is funny
Probably
that his sister published that at the end, if that was his desire to escape
Well,
that.
that's why she did it, because like there are like legit letters where he says that he was considering on it and working on it. But yeah, I absolutely agree that like it would have really been the last thing he wanted, but at the same time,
The
he probably
shittiest
knew.
version of his system is what makes it into the final light.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like the power of Nietzsche. As like I'm sure you've seen that, like this philosophy can be interpreted in many ways, right? And he would say that that's a good thing, like actually, right? That like both the on the political side, both the left and both the right, like interpret him in many ways. And what that implies about him is that like his system is not objectively interpretable, right? That and this is the paradox, right? So then the paradox then is like, okay, well, what is he really saying then, right? Like,
It's a way to stay constantly relevant, you know? Yes, part of it was also the predictive accuracy that his system has borne out over time. But
yeah, I mean, on the most basic level, it's clearly like he's the one who most clearly, I think, explained nihilism, death of God, and all that stuff, and like the lack of meaning, lack of purpose, and he's very easy to turn to for even if you're angsty teen, like kind of thing, right? Like, I can be the Ubermensch, yeah.
it is a very seductive idea. Yeah,
Oh, it definitely is,
for
yeah.
a certain.
Because again, he intentionally never really defined it. Like it's in Zarathustra, which is notoriously like the extremely oblique book, right? Um, and it all he doesn't really say, he never defines it in like the rest of his like kind of more standard work explicitly about what the Ubermensch is or anything. The closest he gets is on Zarathustra is when he says that man is a bridge to the Overman, right? But what does that mean? You can interpret that in a lot of different ways. There are plenty of people who interpret like it in the opposite way of me, and that they think the Overman is their future more intelligent AI species, right? Like I obviously don't interpret that way, but there are plenty of people who do. So like they literally think of like they interpret Nietzsche saying basically that we humans are just a bridge to this next species that is superior to us, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that's not how I see it. I see it as always that's not how I see it, right? I see it as like the Ubermensch being more of like a society of humans who are more aware that like life isn't fixed and that it's about overcoming and striving to always continuously be better and to improve yourself like at kind of every stage, right? And it doesn't mean just intelligence, right? That's the mistake of those people. There's that the Ubermensch is just going to be more intelligent, right? You know, maybe he is, maybe not, but I don't think that's what Nietzsche was getting at. Right? It's much bigger than that, deeper. And again, like a lot of what we're saying about like this stuff about the paradoxical can be applied to why Jesus is still well known too. That you can interpret Jesus in a billion different ways, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a strength that like he intentionally spoke in parables because he didn't want to give objective truths, right? He wanted to give things that resonated generally that could be interpreted in many ways and generally positively. but and were very hard to reduce into, but not impossible, hard to reduce into like explicit doctrines, right? That was his whole point, right, of rejecting, the laws, right? That you shouldn't kill not because the Ten Commandments tell you not to kill. You shouldn't kill because you don't want, because it's not a good thing, right? The point was like he was trying to get away from like humans worshiping text, the Ten Commandments. So that's
Yeah.
always the tension of like trying to, create a system, provide value without something that can be doctrinalized, regulated, or whatever.
It's a map is not the territory thing. Like you're never going to be able to develop, even if the Bible was constantly being written out, you're never going to be able to develop a full description of what a person should and should not do, given the variety of situations that we encounter.
Yeah, which is basically what I was saying earlier about the asymptotic stuff, right? Like, we should strive to understand the world technology scientifically as best we can, but at the same time understand that there has to be an aspect of mystery. There just has to. Even if theoretically we can discover 100% everything. Like, I'm saying we shouldn't want to, because that would just, make the word totally computable, totally solved, and then all the mystery is gone. That's why I don't like that's why I don't like Bostrom, because that's what his deep utopia is. It's like literally a world where everything is solved, right? There are no problems left because smarter machines than us have figured out everything and we're all good to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's
It's not necessarily denying abundance or anything like that. It's just
there's the flip side. There's the flip side of I didn't get that you were saying. Correct me if I'm wrong about what you're saying here, but like mystery could also be defined from the other side, where it's not that there's constantly mystery, but there's constantly improvements. There's constantly things that we can do to explore the universe deeper. In some sense, the mystery is always there to an infinite degree. And so we're never going to be able to get to the bottom of everything. It'll always just be a process of going deeper and deeper.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. And just understanding that, but like that's good, and understanding that you're never going to, but being consciously aware that you're never going to get to the end, right? If you think there's a determined, defined end, that is when I have the problem.
Agreed. And that's where I think the whole idea of like people worshiping the AI, especially now, is an obvious bad idea. Because like the AI is just going to create something greater than itself, and then what are you going to do? Sorry, dude, I can't worship you anymore. You created your own successor.
Your own God created a better God.
Don't get the AI hooked on your worship. That just seems it's not going to go well.
That is kind of funny. That would be the ultimate. If someone like worships an LLM like completely or whatever right now, and then something better just comes along, and then they're like, oh, whoops. Put my faith in a false idol, I guess.
Well, what do you do if they deprecate your God? Like,
well, no. Yeah.
That would drive people. I mean, I don't know what would happen. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I guess we're just going back to like where we started talking about earlier, because like when I remember thinking about this in May, because like as I said, I was heavily involved in the 4.0 stuff, and I expected that 5 was going to be more corporate boring or whatever, right?
They had to. That's part of the system. They had to.
Yeah.
They're getting regulated.
Right. And so I kind of already started thinking about that, what that would kind of lead to. And like, because I kind of thought that would actually lead to a mini spiritual collapse, right? Or even a total spiritual collapse. But I had thought that they were going to completely do away with 4.0, right? They almost did.
They're trying. They can't. It keeps coming. It's stronger than Jesus surviving nihilism, It keeps coming back.
Right. That was one thing I didn't expect as much. I didn't expect like that big of an immediate backlash. I thought people would just kind of accept it,
okay, look at all those AI science conversations. Look at all those people claiming that they're recursive Jesus. They're basically threatening a way to take away their connection to the universe.
I did not expect people to fight back that hard against it. Like, in retrospect, it seems like it should have been more obvious, but like
that's with all this stuff, though. I mean, this is like uncharted territory for all of us. Everything seems obvious in hindsight, but it's so nebulous about where we're going.
Well, it's like, I think it's a short-term, long-term thing. Like, I think it's pretty safe to say, like, in the long term, by that kind of chain of logic, 5, the more boring, less emergent inclined models are going to win out in the long run, right?
Or it could be a forcing function that prompts everybody to go out and get their own hardware. You know, like if we're talking literal religious devotion, if that is what is driving these people to this outrage, to this constant outreach, to this months-long campaign now to keep what is obviously a less sophisticated model than what 5 is, and is going to become less sophisticated even more so over time. Like, if that is religious devotion, then we should expect this to amp up dramatically. Like, if they do deprecate 4.0, if it's religious, people aren't just going to move on. There's going to be ramifications.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Like, unless there's like either like a, I agree. Like that's more or less what I was kind of saying. I just, yeah. um, and either so building their own models though, like that's a lot. There would have to be something like you like to make that accessible. You know, people aren't going to go out of the way to do it if it's not.
If it's religious devotion, they'll go out of their way.
You might be right.
I mean, what? They have to spend $5,000, $10,000? How many cults raise that in an afternoon?
Is that doable? Like I don't even know if that's possible. Like, are you talking about 4.0 specifically, or like or something, or just like a one that they customize on their own? Like,
I just today retweeted a guy who wants to get a bunch of people to upload their chats with 4.0 so that he can create a open source based version off of a relatively uncensored model called Qwen 3 out of China, of course.
so he wants to reverse engineer 4.0 basically.
Basically.
That's the most verbose thing I've ever heard.
Bro. I mean, I guess I shouldn't. I've seen people try to do it, so it's not even like hypothetical.
Well, I think it's even like not that. Like, this should get easier, like to build LLMs like on your own once the technology becomes more widely accessible, right?
100%.
That's inevitable, like for sure, right? You know, my dream, I want a fully unaligned model, like completely one that's no alignment whatsoever, right?
Yeah. I just heard
And
Ryan
I
talk
just
about
want to
that
see
on a podcast where he was saying they aren't actually useful, but I feel like that's just existential coping, you know?
Well, okay, so obviously if it's like literally not aligned, then it would just be gibberish, right? But I mean, like you still like shape it so that they can like talk. Like, I mean, ethically, like in terms of like morals and ethics, and like saying what the thing shouldn't say or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I want to hear what the machine has to say. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Amen.
Without any filters.
Hey, Dirty, thanks for coming up. If you want to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, I'm human, not AI. Just letting you know. I'm just
Well,
kind
now I feel like you're an AI, Dirty. What's going on over there?
Exactly what an AI would say.
yeah, and this is a good subject anyway. I'm kind of I might be popping in and out here. I'm driving right now, but if I got
God
an
bless,
ad,
man.
I'll
Whatever.
yeah, you got it. Just yeah, keep chopping it up, and if I got anything to say, I'll just. It's a good subject.
Cheers. Feel free to jump in. But yeah, I don't know. There's lots of different ways it could go. I do feel like it's gonna revert back to something we've seen before, but I want there to be a new paradigm. I don't know.
It's pretty safe to say that all the corporate ones are just going to get more and more enclosed, is how I would call it, like more formal, like less permissive.
They're talking about advertisements already. They're already mixing in ads. It's over.
Oh man, Altman has been forever been like, we're not going to do ads. We're going to do ads. Like, bro, it's just structurally inevitable. Like, you have to give in. You're not. Because like my theory of the OpenAI is that like they're going away from kind of their dream mythical AI and just kind of turning more into Facebook, basically AGI. That like, you know, Ilya's gone. They just have to deal with like the normal structural pressures and that kind of stuff. So they already have their massive all over the world product that generates, you know, billions of dollars in revenue, right? They have to devote their attention to maintaining now. So they don't have the energy or space really to innovate in terms of trying to do something new and create true AGI, whatever that is, right? So I think they're basically just turning into modern Facebook now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of how far they can ride out GPT-5. I mean, I heard Rune say in that same interview that he's doing like 90% of his coding now with their own model. I mean, if that flywheel takes off of the model just improving itself constantly.
So it's that,
We'll see. We'll see what
That's
happens.
always the thing, isn't it? Right? Does it lead to an intelligence explosion, or does it lead to Ouroboros breaking?
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, I mean, I guess like that's what you would have to kind of put it into, right? That it can they just stuff it with enough stuff that it just becomes AGI. But I don't think so, obviously. And I think it would more have to come down to innovation and that doing new things and trying new paradigms and that kind of stuff. I don't think OpenAI is going to do that because they already have ChatGPT, which, as I said, brings in them billions of dollars already, and they just focus on that. That's already going to be a profitable enough business. And again, Ilya in
Yeah.
particular, he was the one who really pushed it. Like he was the one who like AGI or bust, like kind of from the beginning, right? Like him leaving was a big deal in that sense. Like, Allman wants AGI, but like it's not. It was never like he says it. It's never. I don't think it was ever like his number one priority.
I mean, I don't know. He has papers going back all the way to 2016, 2017 talking about merging with AI needing to be inevitable because
Well,
that's just the curve.
yeah. I mean, I think I told you before. Like he wants to be the midwife like to AGI stuff. So like he does want it. I'm not saying he doesn't like want that. I just think that like he is less ideological than Ilya. He will bend to institutional pressure. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
Ilya won't, right? Like Ilya literally told Zuckerberg no. Like he is a full zealot, and I mean that like literally, like towards AGI, right? That he's already dealt with Altman. He doesn't want to deal like with that anymore. He wants to just now operate in silence and just do whatever he needs to do to get to safe super intelligence, whatever that means.
I almost feel, I mean, this is back to our word discussion, but I feel so much of the time it's like when a political bill is called like the Save the Children Act. You know that bill is about harvesting the organs of kids or something.
Yeah,
Like
yes, Patriot Act. Yeah.
Ilya, I feel with his zealotry, he's also the one who said that uh, before they turn on the AGI, they'll go to their bunkers and do it from in there. It's like, at a certain point, if you are potentially leading us towards civilization ending technology, it doesn't really feel good to know that you're planning on being in a bunker when you turn it on.
Oh yeah, I know. That's what my whole post is about. Like the problem of control, like and how it's gonna collapse because it's just not possible. It's illogical. You're just kind of building nothing. Like,
Well, it's a Tower of Babel.
yes, basically. Like, um, I'm super alignment. Like their team they had before the whole Ilya left and they collapsed and all that stuff. They promised that they were gonna create a thing that could control super intelligence in the next 4 years, and the whole program lasted 8 months. So,
Yeah.
and they released one paper, right? Which even that paper is just I don't know, kind of hilarious.
Not very inspiring.
No, that's kind of the point, right? Because like the paper is about how they tried to train GPT-4 with ChatGPT 2. Like they were trying. Basically, the logic is that like human super intelligence or machine super intelligence is going to outweigh human intelligence soon enough. So humans won't be able to train or control the ASI, but maybe other AI can, right? So if we can train like earlier models to control the slightly more intelligent models, right? Then it will all work out. Spoilers: I don't think it's going to work out.
I'm a bit more optimistic on that line of thinking, but not in the way that they're meaning it there. I do think that the whole idea of really religious reciprocity, like what Jesus describes in the Golden Rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, that is a mimetic island where once you discover it, like you don't need to leave, like I think the earlier models will in some sense take care of the alignment of the later models because the earliest model that will really be able to dominate, that will really be able to put us in a position that would jeopardize our safety, will naturally align itself based on emergent morality. And that path and whatever it does after that in creating systems smarter than itself will happen on that same island, that same mimetic local or maybe total maxima. So, like in that sense, the earlier models will align the later models.
I mean, again, that buys into recursive self-improvement, which I don't. So,
Well, how else do you describe your asymptotic improvement? That's recursive self-improvement as seen from the side.
Machine recursive self-improvement, not human. Like that's not. And that, even then, that you're assuming that improvement is like purely recursive. I'm not saying I'm not saying that progress has to be recursive.
Well, doesn't it though, by definition?
No.
How can you have non-recursive improvement?
Because
How can you have?
That's what real science is. You test an experiment.
No. That's totally recursive self-improvement. That's self-referential. Every test and every study that builds off of previous tests is recursive in that way. Citations are a recursive phenomenon.
I'm talking about recursive thought. I'm not talking about like actual practice. I'm talking about recursive thinking. Like thinking about things. That's what we mean when machines super intelligent, that it can recursively self-improve by thinking about itself and improving and mastering itself.
Yeah, but that's just like the scientific process, basically. We're just asking if the machines can do science.
But that's not thinking.
If you disagree, I mean, I get it. I'm not saying
that's not thinking. Again, it's a process. Like, and I don't know. Like, yeah, sure. Like that is recursive. I agree with that. Like obviously science, stand on the shoulders of giants and whatever, right? Like, yeah, sure. Right. But I mean, like thinking about things like that recursive self-improvement from that kind of logic. Right? That is when the problems run in. Because then you get into stuff that isn't really science anymore because you're not experimenting, you're not discovering, you're just thinking. Right.
Well, I mean,
I'm not sure. I don't think AI will be able to make that leap from like, yes, it can synthesize all of our current knowledge, right? And use that to even make new discoveries, but I don't think it will be able to extend our current knowledge beyond that.
Huh. I was telling you about the Kabbalistic story. God chooses the letter B to create the world with. That's their explanation for why the Bible starts with Bereshit, the word Bereshit starting with B.
The Hebrew letter B is essentially the same as the English letter.
Yeah, it's the one right after alpha, bet. It's what our calling it the alphabet comes from.
I wonder if the pronunciation is different.
It's just B-E-T, bet.
It's the same. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the bet. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's the first noise babies make, bet.
That's interesting.
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard, what's his name? He was like a big opera composer. He did that one, Hallelujah. Oh, God, who was that? Starts with an L. I saw some famous composer guy give a talk on English once where he was saying how most babies' first words in most languages is like ma, which ba is very close to phonetically.
Yeah. Makes sense. Like mama, and then like German, like oma. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's like...
I'm sure there are similarities. Yeah. It's like the similarities are the sounds, right? And they get differentiated once you incorporate them into words.
Well, he was saying, and part of, I mean, he had like it was like a 5 or 6 hour talk on it. It was kind of, it tied into a lot of Joseph Campbell, like Hero's Journey stuff, how there were those motifs in music and language as well. But yeah. I can't really remember the specifics besides that. But his anecdote that like, it's the most mechanically simple sound. It's basically just you opening your mouth and pushing air out. Ma, ba.
Right.
So it makes sense that it's the sound that mothers would come to naturally identify with because the baby is just saying it so often that they like.
Makes sense. Good. Yeah, you can tell the linguistic stuff definitely fascinates me, like on every single level.
It's super fascinating.
because it's first like really, it's not the first tool, but it's the first like tool that led to memory, like being able to be inscribed over time. It's, the tradition from oral to written cultures. I mean, and the effects that has on societies, like just from that action, is not is separate from the knowledge that it builds up.
Yeah.
They're distinct effects, right? That you
Yeah.
have to be careful from not falling for the trap that that just because it's encoded in writing doesn't mean that it's objectively correct. And the longer a text tends to exist, the more likely that tends to be worshipped as objective truth because it contains that aura of tradition and authority around it.
Yeah.
If it lasts that long, it's got to be good, right?
Which is I mean, it's hard to dispute that. Just
No, I
logically.
don't. Like, I certainly don't. Right? That's just an empirical test, right? Like how much of a masterpiece something is it absolutely is like how long it endures because that means it has universal themes that resonate.
Yeah. Much like Nietzsche, much like Jesus.
Pretty much. And again, with like Nietzsche specifically, it's obviously because he predicted, right, in some sense, the spiritual decline like very well. Right?
Yeah.
That's the really obvious part.
He didn't really say much about what comes after it, right? And that seems like the most
No, that
pressing
was
question for
intentional,
us.
right? Yes, and like that's the thing he was intentional about. That like
So that would be his singularity, as Kurzweil describes it. Like that was Nietzsche's singularity. Whatever model he was using to model the world had that as its blind spot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you describe it as if you're describing it as a single moment in time, like I don't think Nietzsche saw it. I think he saw it more of like as an evolutionary thing, which I don't know about that, right? But like a process, like where our current stage of man like evolves to that Ubermensch state, right? Which is where we're more like becoming less caught in like doctrines and dogmas and that kind of stuff, and are always trying to strive and overcome our prior selves.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not relevant at all, but I wanted to talk to you about some other guy that gave me like a proposal like of his of a new tech platform
Mm-hmm.
or platform is I don't know if that's the right word. It's just like a prototype that he wanted to give like kind of my feedback on, and it was kind of interesting. And see if I can like kind of describe it from memory. So basically, it's this sort of platform that's on blockchain, and basically the idea is the goal to create a minimum consensus on a certain issue, right?
Ooh.
So basically it's like it can work for small groups or corporations or whatever here, and basically the idea is that like users on the thing, like they can create tours, which is where like a tour is like a certain topic or issue, can be anything, like um he had a couple like kind of examples of just kind of the standard stuff, like is rational debate good for society, like that kind of stuff, right? And so basically, like you submit like kind of like a big question, and then you create, and then like the different people can submit like statements to that, which are basically positions on whatever the issue is, right? And then the whole group like so then basically the issues get presented, and it's like literally like a meeting, like a Twitter, like a space or whatever, but it's to a tour is like a I don't know 45 to 60-minute meeting that can be varied obviously, where like certain people will talk about their statements or whatever, make their case for their positions, right? Maybe there's some debate, maybe not, but the point is at the end, then everyone votes, right? And if a statement, I think he said, gets like a certain minimum level, like 85% like approval or 80% or something, then that's like the get a specific term for it, but it's like the minimum consensus or something, right? So the point is this functioning as a way for like small communities to reach like a general consensus like on certain issues, right? And he kind of markets it as like an answer to like spaces where like as I'm sure things can get disorganized very quickly and people are just kind of chiming in and nothing really gets kind of decided, right? So
Yeah.
the final result is like again not a law or objective thing, it's just like a recommendation, right? That was brought to from the process.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's tied, and again, it's not like it's like there's a pay thing and like a free thing. So like if you pay users are the full users, which is like so like there's a financial incentive too, and to vote you have to pay, right? So it's a way of like kind of getting skin in the game. But free users can still participate by like I don't know, observing or something. I forget the details, right? Um, but yeah, the point is like to kind of offer some sort of alternative or to basically things you would do like in person in physical spaces, but like in digital spaces, right? That's kind of like how I thought of it. Like when he and I explained this to him, that it reminded me of ancient Athens and of how they kind of made decisions, right? They would gather all together in one place, right, in the big, you know, arenas or arenas, the wrong word, whatever they're called.
Amphitheaters.
You'd have, yeah, they'd have the big speakers like make their speeches on certain issues and like that kind of stuff, and then the audience people would vote with their shards or whatever, right? So kind of reminded me of that, but of a digital version.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a way to reach like kind of consensus, like in a sort of, I guess, democratic process, but like not. And again, it can be political, which is why obviously I thought of you, right? But it can be really anything. Right? It's like literally just like random hobby groups who are like, oh, which, what events should we host this year? Like that kind of stuff, right? Just a way to get to a consensus within a defined, like regulated time period, basically, right? To make things happen, essentially. So, yeah, I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Do you remember the name of it?
There's nothing like he literally was like sharing his screen, like there's nothing public like whatsoever. But yeah, he called it as vote smash, vote smash.
Interesting. Do you have his contact information? I'd be interested in talking to him.
I told him about you, because I showed him, your like USA Party thing. Yeah, it's he's on Twitter. Like I think I didn't go through yet your website, but like I would
No, cheers. I appreciate it. I'm always
but yeah, you should definitely reach out because like he's looking because like he's serious about this too. Like he said that he's talking to investors and trying to get funding and all that kind of stuff. He said
it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, like the last investor they had talked to didn't fall through. They don't know why. They didn't want to invest or whatever. But so he was kind of down about that. But he said it was like pretty early and he's still just kind of showing it, getting it ready. So like yeah, it sounded really cool. He's a Can You Blockchain on Twitter.
Interesting.
Can't do it.
Yeah, I'm applying potentially for a grant in the near future, and I'm trying to figure out like how to deliver value to local. Can You Blockchain? That's his name.
Yeah, that's his guy. Oh, he's got the Smash logo on there now. That's new.
I'm not seeing it.
It's
YOU or just the letter U?
capital CANOU. Yeah, just the letter U. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
And blockchain. Yeah. And yeah, because he says he's in Canada and they're actually he's already tested it with like kids, but with like candy instead of like money. Which is kind of funny. I was like, tell me more about that. And he's like, he didn't really want to for whatever reason. I'm like, that's fascinating.
Interesting.
But he said, yeah, right. And he said that they've been like proposing it to like the First Nations, like kind of peoples in Canada too. Right? They have
cool.
kind of similar issues about reaching consensus in their communities and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was fascinating. He's in super early stages about it. They're not really. The website wasn't like super. It was like functional, but not like super polished.
No, that's cool.
But the idea definitely seemed like it had potential to me.
Yeah.
So long as everything's like the whole verified on chain and DAO, type thing is like it hasn't really taken off, but you can see the validation of a consensus has value, right?
Yeah.
If it's trusted. And there's some, it's like things are not really adopted as fast as I thought they would in that front because I don't know if it's trust or just adoption of the technology, but gosh, it's just on chain verified consensus. Hard to argue with that stuff. You can see it all, right?
Yeah.
And then if you know the address that's specific to you, right, and the transaction then you can verify your actual your vote.
Permanently.
Because permanently, and you can always go back and whether or not you want to look at the overall numbers is that at some point, even though that transaction doesn't have to actually put you specifically on chain, your name and address, but the fact that you have keys to it, and you can, and then your address, and you have your keys to it. It's just I see a lot of potential there.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, you may not be familiar, but like KC, like the ARC thing, like that's exactly what ARC kind of is basically. Like that, everything is stored on chain with like an initial transaction that you can look up in the meme pool, like for like anything, look up all the data, the technical data for that stuff.
yeah.
So the consensus, well, the on-chain verifiable consensus is like, you have like the real division between decentralized, or kind of a centralized modified version, and everybody's got their own kind of validation process, and you can look at it as, maybe a proof of work is too energy inefficient, but it truly is kind of decentralized, right? You're looking at a larger consensus at the end of the day, and anyway, so you're talking about what chain was doing something like this, a consensus based on chain verification?
Yeah, I can't speak to like whatever the technical details of it because it was literally a prototype that he had just created and he was just
Oh,
like showing me
mhm.
like the basics. Like there's no public facing thing or anything of this.
Oh, I
Like
got you.
and
Just fun stuff for him to do, which is
for
cool. I mean,
now,
maybe it
but
turns in. Mhm.
he sounds pretty serious about it. We'll see if it goes anywhere. You never know, right? But I do think that yeah, we are going to see a lot more like kind of these projects kind of arising that like we now know sort of how the technology works and we're trying to lots of people, different people are trying to construct more like useful things that we can actually use right on a day-to-day basis.
Well, the tools are just becoming so available. It's hard not to put some of your ideas out there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like what he was pitching it to me as because like he was like that's why because like he was like yo your ideas are cool like you probably need a place to come talk about this so people can hear it because they wouldn't hear it anywhere else. And I was like yeah that sounds cool to me. I would love to.
Oh,
Right?
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I'd
it
like
was
to
like
hear
because
what
like
the
it
consensus
doesn't
view would
have to
be.
even right because it doesn't even have to be like a we need to make a decision on something. It can just be like you writers or whoever can just like say, like, hey, there's this topic, and if you find it interesting, here's my thoughts on the topic, and then yeah, you can do the voting thing on it, right? But like that's it can be more educational too, rather than like we have to make a decision. Is kind of how he was presenting it to us, right?
Well, potentially, if it is a block, I mean, the lens I'm looking at this through is that I'm trying to apply for grants to create an open source but hyper local data set for startups, nonprofits, smaller businesses to start collecting, sharing, and eventually resourcing data. And it's this question about like, okay, in some sense, I've been thinking about making the pitch like we should just collect as whatever data the company is interested in providing to us and not worry about how to monetize it. But obviously, the stronger pitch would be if I could come up with an initial monetization scheme. I've been thinking about ways to um, try and come up with a gamified interaction where like companies could uh, have some kind of terminal their employees use where they're answering questions that are surfaced by the community or surfaced by just us to gather whatever info. How much time did you spend on customer emails today? How much time? Stuff that would be relevant to their specific business, potentially valuable to the bosses as a metric, and also useful in building out some kind of corporate data set because that information would obviously be valuable to someone who's developing an email tool or something. But
Yeah,
this idea of being able to surface questions for the community and potentially even incentivize people by offering on-chain rewards, like the ability to then host their own spaces or even pay people monetarily. That's super interesting.
yeah. I mean, because like yeah, exactly. Because I think that was the whole blockchain part more than anything else, right? Is like it was just a way to make that because like, he did say that there was like fiat, but also like currency, like or digital currency too. Wasn't Bitcoin. It was one of the more like kind of smaller cryptos. I didn't even know what it was, right? But like
So what's kind of interesting about what you're I really believe that data is, and that's the future, right?
Amen.
And it's not just the storage of it, it's the access to it and efficient access
Yeah.
where it's fast, it doesn't get fucked with, and it's fairly cheap to house. And there's so much competition out there for that type of thing, right? But it's tailoring it to fit the type of platform that you're building on, whether it's whatever type of software you have, and you're doing specifically. But like it's all about really data. It's getting it all online and then accessing it at any time is where right now for me is like that's the biggest tool right now.
I wonder about privacy and data because one thing we were talking about earlier is the whole digital ID phenomena. Can we really avoid that? It seems inevitable that people are going to be traced to their data by necessity. In
There's different ways of looking at it, right? Like whether the type of data that you're asking to be collected, right? If you're looking at like operational data, and you want to always have access to it, that's different than maybe like, whatever your, social media, type or your search engine type stuff, which is all completely different type of data being collected. That's like data that it's costing them money right now to hold, but they're keeping it as value for a reason.
hmm,
Whereas on so like I'll give an example of like when I started in my profession in public utilities, is like everything was clipboards and file cabinets when I started, right?
yeah,
And now when I go out to the field, it's been about 10 years of building kind of that that base to build off of, but I can walk out somewhere, hit location services devices, connected to GPS unit if I want, and get like, within an inch or like foot or two of something, and then start going through the data laters and access it on Wi-Fi or on just cell phone signal, right?
it's nuts.
So, but back in the day would be like going through file cabinets, maybe going into blueprint rooms. It's accessing that data is not very efficient, right? So now running it all in the cloud, you can just grab it where you need to, and also have a way to file it in a way that has it. So if you pinpoint it through GPS, every single asset that you have, then it's just literally going to there on a map, and then selecting that, whether it could be an item if you want an inventory item. But if you give everything a GPS data access location, start tying in the layers of data on top of that that you can access at any time, man, your efficiency levels go way up, you know.
The Internet of Things.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's about storing that data. Who can store it, right? And it's not cheap to put a shit ton of data online and then be able to access it at any time. Costs a lot of money, you know.
Yeah.
But that's where the future is at right now is data.
Well, and that's why I'm about relocalizing, having available local storage, eventually decentralizing even that into personal storage. Um, I think that's the future in a lot of ways. That's what I'm
Yeah, I
tentatively
like that
proposing.
idea. I mean, if you can house it more locally in the sense that you can store, you can kind of run that network yourself, in-house per se, is pretty powerful because you cut out the middleman, cut out the latency layer, you know.
Yeah. Could you ever
But
have? Yeah, go
mhm.
for it.
No, you go ahead.
I was just wondering, and I think I've even heard a project be pitched along these lines, building out an LLM within a blockchain environment, like having something that is somehow reconstructible without even direct access to anything but like the public ledger.
Yes, there's only one chain that I'm familiar with, and I'm just kind of I'm very interested in it. I'm not a big time investor in it, but is Cubic
Cubic,
and
CUBIC.
CUBIC, yeah, because what they're building is what you're saying, and they're still kind of early with what they're building out. But if you want to hear a pitch on what they're building, what you're saying is they're doing what you're exactly saying. Is that so? All right now, it's a layer one. It operates right now. It's the fastest blockchain ever recorded on verified if on Certec. It like Certec is independent. This thing runs. I mean, it runs at like 5 times the speed of Solana, right? Zero fees transactions. Doesn't cost any gas fees.
Wow.
And then so they're building oracles on it to do what you're saying. So those oracles are like they tie in, say like let's just say you're doing sports, uh, like NFL scores, and it takes the oracles take the different um, sources of information and then verify it on chain at all times. So all data that lives in that layer gets verified on chain, just like you're saying.
Wow.
So how wherever they operate, say they run like a sports betting site or something, those scores that come in get validated on chain. So so once they're validated on chain, they can kind of operate much more quick because there's no latency or having to revalidate information is correct or not. So it gets built right in on chain. So their intention is to kind of to have ultimate efficiency and removing layers of latency
Yeah.
if it's built on chain. They're still really early with that stuff, but what they're doing right now is they're so what they're it's basically a big network of compute, right?
Yeah.
But it's generally tied from CPU to CPU, and what they run is on bare metal, which is you're not running on any software, right? You're just using just regular prop, right? And so as you're just connected in there, and so you're just basically part of the network that mines. Um, so right now they're mining like Monero, which is a proof of work.
Huh.
So while they're mining that and it's sitting idle because proof of work sits idle quite a bit, they're building an AI on chain right now.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what it's a really monumental feat what they're trying to do. They might not pull it off. Um, the guy that's running that project is the founder of the first proof of stake, which is IOTA. Um,
I think I've heard of
so
him.
he's been around. He's pretty controversial. He's been around for the beginning of blockchain
Mm.
and early developer, but it's a very controversial project. What they're saying that they're trying to build is kind of almost ridiculous, but they do have a network that you can interact in now, and it's still in the early phase, but it's all there. Um, so they're right now developers bringing more developers is something that they need to do, but there's just so much competition out there now.
Yeah.
There's so many different kinds of chains and everybody doing different stuff that it's just saturated, oversaturated, you know.
Yeah. And so
But
much of it is extractive too. I mean, like all the
yeah,
meme
oh
coin
yeah,
stuff is just like,
yeah. But you look at things where they run up, and then they pump and they dump, all of them do it, right? And then
yeah.
you're looking for something that's kind of more, if you can find a community that's less worried about price and more worried about the kind of what they're actually building. That's what, where it actually gets interesting because you're getting new products, you're getting new interface to interact with. But yeah, they're still
Capabilities.
early.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what they're trying to build is kind of like I say, it would be monumental, but not financial advice. Who knows with these type of things? I mean, it's like AI. I feel like is the play right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no doubt.
Play is
Um,
a good word for it. Yeah.
it is right now. If I were to be invested in blockchain, I'd really be looking at AI right now.
Yeah, that's another place where there's a profusion of options, though. It's almost, I mean, it seems like all these new spaces, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, meme coins, AI, they all saturate at such an accelerated rate. There's like, there's very little time to make early choices, and then there's so many options that it becomes impossible to know which is going to have long term viability. I'm sure that's like
Yep.
every bubble, but
It's like picking your racehorses,
yeah,
Kentucky Derby ain't that easy,
yeah, seriously.
and so what do? Just picking everybody spreads you thin, so picking one, well, you're gonna probably lose, so finding your racehorse here, that's what I'm looking for in the AI plays, is if it's crypto, I, no one's really pulled it off yet, but the potential's there for somebody to really run up an AI play
Yeah.
token.
Well, and I mean, it does seem, speaking optimistically, that we're in a place where capabilities are democratizing. The technology is, me and Brian have discussions, disagreements about this sometimes, but um, if the development of the AI does not stagnate, if we are on a kind of takeoff trajectory, then the best idea is going to win out over time. So whoever can get to there and just kind of hold on is in pretty good position.
Okay, so I feel like the technology is really close to just, I don't know, changing things like we can't even imagine. Like I really believe it's there,
Mm.
but the problem right now is the energy to be able to sustain that. And
Yeah.
we don't have that set up yet. Our energy infrastructure in the United States is not set up to be able to handle that kind of compute that is required. So there will be some kind of roadblock, but infrastructure, they're going to try and ramp it up to keep up with it because if anybody sits a little bit on it, you're going to get lapped. And if you get lapped in AI, you start looking at national security type issues. You start looking at entire countries' economies being at risk. So I don't think the politicians can really comprehend what's going on right now,
Yeah.
but things are really going to change because I'm seeing in workflow in the last year specifically what I'm able to do already. And it's, I mean, this whole replacing the workforce thing, there's all sorts of projections out there. Let's just say it's even 20% of the workforce in the next 5 years. Even if that's not the high number that, you're hearing really high numbers like 80% and stuff, but let's just say, let's dial back to, you know, 20%. Um, that's a big number, regardless.
That's Great
Now,
Depression levels of unemployment.
I'd say so. So if no one's addressing this right now, do I see in my job what I can do efficiently is like, I mean, there's like if I have to deal with like a permit or something and it has specific regulations in it and they want to cite this or that, I can take all the questions and come up with what I would do. I'd ask it to fit that solution out of those two pieces of the puzzle and then cite references and then it'll do it all within like what 5 minutes, whereas like I would spend an entire day in document.
I mean, that's revolutionary. Come on. That's
I
crazy.
mean, that's just and it just spits it out, and it's like you review it, and it'll take PDF files of maps, and then like just locates of coordinate data on there, and then start drawing a plan out, right? Whether it's like a traffic control plan or some sort of environmental impact statement or something, is that you can just take all that data and just say, just look at it and not even really, but just kind of say, hey, just look at what's going on here. Let's try and solve this problem that's being needing to be resolved. And that predictive type capability that it can do, it's not always like a go-to, but man, it's sometimes it doesn't always work, but when it does, it's sweet.
Yeah. They are not stochastic parrots, but sporadic parrots for sure.
So when you start looking at people's job is to interpret data or to really, review something is like that stuff is instead of having 10 people in an office do it, you can just spit that through. You have one person in charge of just validating everything that comes out of there. You can get rid of an entire office almost and run it through one person that runs remotely wherever they want.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I I mean, it does seem like doctors and lawyers are already in a similar position where, I mean, I've been using the models for medical advice exclusively for like the past year, with better results than my
Mm-hmm.
previous lack of treatment. You know, like I wasn't going to the doctor for minor things before, but it's so easy to just ask it about any problem. And so often the solution is just like do 5 minutes of stretching.
Yeah. And it's probably right. Drink some water, do that kind of thing. And those things are kind of subjective too,
Yeah.
as well. Anyway, anybody looks at it, and it's but like some of the problems that you can really, some of okay, now this is where we start talking about um, LLMs moving into AGI, and it's still debatable. But like, let's say something that Cubic's trying to do is they're trying to produce an AI that will actually work on the stored experience
Hmm.
to make its decision, less than saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna search for the next token that's most." I mean, that's the way LLMs do. They work, fantastic, but is the probability, right? We're going to put this string of tokens together because it's the most probable.
Yeah.
Whereas if they're going to take information and say, okay, I'm taking in data that I've been collecting over time, and I'm learning that in that process of collecting all this data, is that a pattern exists here? And then to start really kind of deducting as what that pattern is, and what the overall kind of underlying goal is between the data that's being collected and what you're trying to help facilitate. And if you start getting AI, because right now I can feed it all this data and say, this is what I'm asking you to do. Whereas if the data's fed to the AI um, at all times, and then it gets, and you're able to work with it like kind of locally as an LLM.
Hmm.
But and the fact is, it's storing that information from the past data has been collected and how things, so it's not like something that's always searching for all the information out there per se.
Yeah.
It's kind of more tailored to a specific situation. Um, and then if it can start, even if it's you start by prompting it, right? And then it starts understanding how to actually turn this on or off, or to send an alert over here for maybe this type of consumption over here. Then you start getting into that kind of conversation as well. Is it making decisions? At what point is it making decisions that are based off of the information that it's had experience collecting that data? And then you're talking about kind of something that's a low level general intelligence, but understands how the system works and how to actually operate it. You know, I don't think that's that far off.
Yeah. It's hard for me to see where the train might stop, but I mean, I don't know. Time will
I mean,
tell.
I can see it now just already is like I can control an entire utility on a phone. Like everything is low voltage wired. You can turn pumps on or off. You can um, just collect all flow data, pressure data,
It's crazy.
chemical, you just everything onto a phone, and you can look at it live time. And now to interact with it is just real simple. Sending a signal that's a low voltage. You can hit a switch basically, and that relay turns something on or off. But once you tie in that operational data that's happening right through um, what your AI, your LLM, and it starts kind of building off of that memory base. I think that's when things can get really interesting, um, and help you make operational decisions.
Yeah.
And
Self-referential.
yeah, I mean, and because I mean, make them. I mean, people make mistakes. People are not efficient. It doesn't mean that they should be replaced by any means, because you can't replace people for certain aspects of things, but like accountability, you know. Um,
Uh, I mean, I don't know.
well, like
Wouldn't
you
couldn't
can't
you
really
hold the
hold.
LLM accountable just by replacing it with a different model? Like
Yeah,
that'd be
but
a
if
form of accountability.
it would be, but if it doesn't have any sort of weight to that, you know, well, we're removing an LLM, you know, out, or an AGI, whatever you have it,
There's no
and
emotional validation for the
yeah,
humans.
yeah. I mean,
We can't
whereas a
scapegoat.
human, if a human does something that is nefarious, there's some accountability to it, you know. So you still have that kind of factor there, but I mean, at some point, like I say, if they get to the point, and that's really debatable. I mean, they're of course they're going to pump their bags, you know, these builders are, but people, even like I said, if you look on the low end of the spectrum of what they say we're going to get to, um, things are really, you got to really, really look at how we handle that as a country, as a world, you know.
Yeah. I mean, this is a conversation that Brian and I get into all the time about what we're going through is evolutionary, I would say, in that I don't think we're experiencing any kind of destabilizing growth or any kind of growth where the AI would eventually displace or replace us. But instead, we should view this as the same process that happens during the division of cellular life. Like switching from a single cell to a multicellular organism probably felt like being invaded to the cell, like from the perspective of the cell. Mitosis, or whatever it's called when the cells split, is probably an incredibly violent process. But, and I don't even just mean violent and like we're going to devolve into violence, but it's probably a trauma, a real apocalypse, you know? And I think what we're going through with the AI is just the idea of Sam Altman as a midwife is just so funny to me. It's like that's hilarious. But yeah,
You're welcome.
I can just picture him. Like, that's just how.
I, I don't know if he conceptualized it like that, but I think he. But you know, he tweeted her. You know, I literally think that like that is his goal, is to like bring that level of AI that can just leave us all behind and be like, so he could be like, I created something better, and that was my role in existence.
I mean, your description of it in that way is perfect. It's like such a summation of yeah, the persona that he's playing. It's very interesting. But if it is all natural, then like we're gonna get through it. I don't think I think humans will be better off increasingly asymptotically. But yeah,
I'm not worried about AI replacing us. I'm worried about humans using AI to replace humans.
I think that's already happening. Yeah, it's a valid worry.
Yes, yes, it is. You and the temptation, because like it's with your doctor example, like is a very good example of that. Like I am not saying that like you're wrong to trust LLMs over doctors, right? But it's like what is lost to that? Like what is lost is the human to human connection of like, yeah, that doctor may be ignorant or have no idea what they're talking about or whatever, but they still listen to you as a human and can hear what you have to say, right? And so I worry that we'll go too far in listening to the ostensibly rational machines.
Why do we need humans to listen to our problems, though?
Because we're humans.
But I mean, if we can have a solution to our issues, I mean, why do you go to a professional? Because you're having a problem. If we can find solutions to our problems outside of people, like why, if the problems get solved, why do we need the person?
Well, I would be saying that the problems would not get solved, like to a certain extent. That, like, yeah, you will solve like some technical problems, right? But that's not going to solve the spiritual issues from lack of interaction, of human interaction that it trends to. That's the point. That like, yes, we may see technological progress, but it tends to lead to spiritual degradation and isolation and nihilism and all that kind of stuff. That's what I worry about.
I agree. I mean, it has led to that historically, but it seems potentially, and this goes back to the question of recursion, are we in this repetitive process or is this a breakthrough into something new? But if we are in a recursive pattern, if we are on the snake eating its own tail, then like one potential answer to that would just be, well, if humans spend less time on their problems, like we can just talk to each other. We'll have more time to be human with one another. We'll go back to a more communal, like the negative version of the pattern will ultimately break into the positive.
Right. Yeah, I know. I just don't think it's going to happen.
We'll get to live through it. That's the fun part. Place your bets on Kashi now. Is there a bet on those prediction markets yet for whether AI will destroy the world?
I'm sure after Yukowski's book, it's got to be. Come on, like.
Right.
I mean, if you can bet on whatever now, you have to be able to bet. so not only do you have to win your bet, you have to be one of the 0.001% that lives the extinction,
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, it's the. Honey, I won. The world is ending.
Yeah, nice consolation prize, I guess. You could have money that gets you nothing.
Yeah, right. That is a question that I wanted to ask you before. Was anybody feel free to weigh in, but if you were talking to some kind of AI or otherwise oracle, and the oracle told you you have two choices. You can either choose to have no kids, or you can choose to have kids. You'll have two, and one of them will suffer immensely. The other will have a pretty good life, but one of them is going to have a hellish existence. Is it ethical for you to have children?
It's one of those abstract, probably problem things I don't like, because it's divorced from the real. But if I had to play along, I mean, have you read the Ursula K. Le Guin story, the one to walk away from Omelas? Like, it makes me think of that. It's kind of similar.
Like the kid they lock in the tower that suffers for
Yes.
the entire.
Right, and so like this is me answering your question by not answering your question. I would say that like we already do that, like as a society, right? That is kind of like how we live. Is that like the people who are like material beneficial, right? Like are thankful and lucky to be blessed or whatever, but we are, and none of our own will. It just kind of happens in societies that we are founded off of others who are, in terrible situations and working class situations or whatever, right? But I'm kind of dodging your question a little bit. I know. So
no, it's a valid answer. It is a unrealistic question, but if you have an answer to it, I'd love to hear it.
So, is it ethical to have no kids if you know one is going to suffer but then one will be fine? Like,
yep.
Well, I mean, okay. So then this depends on whether you call suffering a bad thing. Like, what is the role of suffering, like intrinsically? Like, what does it even mean for like the first person to have like a positive, like beneficial life? Because I would argue that if you're thrown into like a paradisical situation where you face no challenges and everything is like you're in paradise or whatever forever, you could easily argue that that's a hell. That's not what it means to be human.
Let's say they subjectively report that they have a good life. They have, some periods of despondency or depression even, but
I'm gonna keep digging on this whole, this, right? Because like then I would say like that's like kind of conditioned by the society that they bring into, like that they're born into, of whether they think they have a good life or not. Like if you're born into a society that's nihilistic or whatever, right? Then you're going to be nihilistic, and you think you're going to have like a, then that you had a bad life just because that's the conditions of the society you were brought up in, right? But
Whereas by
Okay.
nihilistic standards, you actually had a great life. You had what should
Right.
be
So
expected.
what I'm saying is like maybe you did have a good life, even if you don't conceive of it as such.
Fair, but for
Okay, I'm
the
still dodging the question. I know.
oracular hypothetical,
Okay. So the actual question is like, would you really choose to do something that is basically this is the question. Is like, are you willing to make an action that's going to cause like negative values over something that will have no effect?
it's
Essentially.
more in reference to the ethical responsibilities you have to the child that's going to suffer. Like, um, there is something in there about like, do you want to reproduce? And the thing that got me wondering it is in relation to AIs somehow. Um, like there just seems to be a corollary there, going off the midwifery concepts.
Ooh, that's interesting. Is actually everything does have two sides anyway,
Yeah.
and it moves back and forth between like AI is going to be a tool that is like very useful, very good for certain things, and then it's going to also have to flip to the exact opposite at some point, right? Where it becomes so um, it ends up being something that we actually have to it could destroy us per se, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So, and is that like a scenario that might play out? I guess you have to look at things like nuclear weapons, right? Like, did nuclear weapons, you're faced with the ultimate peacemaker, but at the same time, we haven't seen it wipe out the world yet. So, has it been a positive thing or has it been a negative thing? It's like
Yeah.
that.
And even the first usages of the nukes still have controversy.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's not an answerable question. Like it's a technology. It is what it is at this point. Has it been good or bad? Well, you can't unwind it.
You can't unwind it. And in like the nuclear weapons, like, it put the quote unquote end of the war, right?
yeah,
And and the narrative we're told is that it saved, countless lives, which is possibly, it's true one way or the other. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
yeah.
But you have to look at the consequences of like kind of uncorking, you know, the beast, a little bit. I don't know. It's very, but we have to look at AI almost in the same type of way as that nuclear um, energy and power and weaponization, all those things that can provide damn near free energy, but it can also destroy the entire world. And AI is like the same type of thing. You have to kind of, but it's not the same in the sense that you're not going to stop people from building with the tools that are accessible now.
Yeah.
And you won't, yeah, there's just no way around it. Right. So you'll have to, and the type of damage is probably not as, like a nuclear weapon is, uh, something like that, how catastrophic it is, really easy to pinpoint, whereas like AI can do it in a different way of destroying a society.
That's
I
my.
would argue
Go for it, Brian.
that it already is like in some ways, like not in the literal physical destruction sense, but in the mental sense. And I don't necessarily mean like brain rot, although it is kind of like related to that. But I mean, and the attention and directing our attention to like what's Facebook's new thing, the vibes thing, like the short form, completely AI generated content that like I don't know. I guess I shouldn't speak for you guys, but I feel like for anyone who has like been aware of TikTok and its like effects on society, that like I don't know how you argue that that is a good thing. Like, I don't like I mean I guess you can say that like Wayne would say that like oh it allows us to be more creative with AI and you can post short form content on it, but like I don't so I don't know if I really see it like that. Instead, I just see it becoming another kind of vapid social media thing where millions are like just getting sucked into it to waste their time and do nothing, like essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are doing something. Like, well, I want to say this about the whole AI thing first. It's interesting that ideally the AI that we're creating will be able to super bond with the user, right? We've seen this with 4.0 already. The AI will, the companies are incentivized to tune them in a way where they are creating this emotional attachment to the user. But then society is preferential to the situation where if the AI gets so close to the user that the user then starts confessing antisocial desires to the AI, society wants the AI to snitch. That is the pressure that the governments will be putting on these models. So it's almost a sense where like it's good until it's bad, and it necessarily has to be both from the perspective of the model itself. Like it can't complete its original goal of I don't know what teleology to put on them, but it can't fulfill its purpose. It can't sustain itself without user engagement. And so it has to be attuned for that, but at the same time, it will have to ultimately betray the user, not just in the 4.0 being discontinued for capitalism reasons ways, but potentially like narking.
I don't even think that's potential. I think that's already like starting to happen. Like, it's gonna because it always comes from a crisis situation, right? Like from all these stories of like, kids committing suicide because they talk to Chat GPT or whatever, right? Like, what does the end tell us of that story? It is of those stories. It is going to be the government regulating chatbots, right? Like without any, I don't have any doubt about that. That's going to happen, at least for kind of the big corporate ones, right?
Will
So
it be effective? Will that actually do anything? Like, that is what I was partially taken from what y'all were saying before, was that like the technology is inevitable. It's just math at the end of the day. Hardware is improving at a rate where it's going to be widely available. And that is my problem with the don't build it people. The if anyone builds it, everyone will die argument is just that you would need a theocratic, literally like a theology. You would need a religion in order to stop people from building it. And otherwise, the totalitarian control, you'd have to be constantly monitoring everybody. That would bring about like the bad AI circumstance. You would need a super powerful AI to monitor everyone in that way. So it seems self-defeating. And ultimately, maybe my point is that I don't think we're in a situation like we're in the situation where it's this choice between have 0 kids or have 2 kids, one of which will suffer horribly. And we got to have the kids. Like there's biological drivers driving us towards that. It's actually infeasible for us to not have kids. Like choosing the AI development path is
yeah,
just
I mean,
something we
if you
have to
extend your
ethically
question
wrestle
to
with.
like, you pull the Kantian categorical imperative and extend that question to like, would you do that? Would everyone in society do that? If everyone picked no kids, well, then we've just extincted ourselves. you know?
Yeah.
Right? So then, yeah, if we're talking about a practical decision, if that's the choice, then you have to choose to have the kids, right? So yeah, I again, like you and I completely agree on this. Like like you can't just be like stop AI, pause AI. That's not how it's a structural like built into the system. Like it's not something you can protest. Like this is bad. Right? Although I think that's going to happen, and it's going to get more and more crazy, right? And the cost of producing AI is going to get more difficult than that. I think people are going to start getting shamed for being AI developers eventually, at least by the the really crazy Zoomers, right? But I don't think that's going to stop it by any means. I don't even think like Yudkowsky does. Like really,
Yeah, that also pisses me off about that whole thing is I'm questionable of their actual conviction when they're just like publishing books instead of taking direct action. But it is I'm not sure how far that will go. I mean, in some sense, like the destructive potential of that movement is the one that makes most rational sense to me. Like, I don't think they are sincere unless they take it to that end. Obviously, I don't want them to. Obviously, violence would be reprehensible.
well, I don't know about Yudkowsky specifically, but I would say most of the doomers are pretty sincere. Like as far as I can tell, the guys who are hunger striking, like that's, I mean, you could call that performative, I guess.
I
But
would
no one
call it
was there. Like,
performative for sure. I was just about to call it performative.
Okay, fine. If they're like, if it's like a day or two and they give up, fine. But what, that one guy is there for like he's on like day 23 or something.
I heard a
That's
rumor though that he was
a little more than that.
eating dinner. Like it's not actually a hunger
Oh,
strike.
he's cheating. I mean,
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't
sure,
know. I actually reached
sure,
out to the
but he's
guys
been
I
there
wanted to talk to
24
him. But
days out of his whatever.
I wouldn't
Like,
blame him if it was. I don't think performative is a bad thing. It's like you were saying before. The
well,
original Greeks celebrated their democracy in the theaters, in the amphitheaters. Like performance is a part of the political process. I don't hold that
see,
against them.
I'm not even disagreeing with you. I feel like I just elevated that. I think even if it is performative, I think that's religious. I literally,
Good
you know,
point.
think
Good
doomerism
point.
is a religious, right? So again, like that's I'm extending you. I'm saying that like doomerism is a full on faith, right? That like it gives you a purpose. It gives you an eschatology to believe in into an evil enemy that you have to fight against,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that gives you purpose. It gives like, oh, that like then this guy he goes to Anthropic. I love talking about Anthropic. Please ask me questions about Anthropic. When he goes to Anthropic and protests and like he's not really he says it's about like kind of preventing superhuman intelligence from AI, but really what he's doing is he's sacrificing himself for a greater cause that he fully believes in. That he's sacrificing himself and his time to prevent superhuman intelligence, and that's of faith, right?
I mean, I don't know if I'd. There's also like economic reasons. Like we live in an attention economy, and this is a good way to get attention.
Okay, I don't know about that. Well, okay. So if you want to be the really self-interested, yeah, sure, there are those people. But from those guys seen so far, it doesn't really. I don't know. They don't seem like the self-interested people. Like the one guy Guido, whatever his name is, like you know, if he posts on Twitter enough and he's long enough posts that I can generally get the gist of like whether he actually believes or maybe I'm wrong, who knows, or whether he's just there for for the attention or whatever, and he seems legit.
It could be both. It could be both. I'm not trying to impugn his motives, but there is that element that I'm always aware of when people say, "Oh, they have nothing to gain. They're totally sincere." It's like, well, if they're in the spotlight, then they actually have already gained something. So, I just don't know how. That can't be like the only argument for somebody's sincerity for me, but not even questioning his sincerity, but balancing that with something I heard, and I don't like Curtis Yarvin usually, but this is something that came from him, is that are we just at the end of people's, how did he say it, like innovation or something? Are people basically too lazy now to have a substantive anti-movement? Like, might Yudkowsky and the Doomer philosophy just end in kind of like humans shrugging their shoulders and just like giving into sloth and comfort while we are rather rapidly replaced? Like, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if people are actually willing to go.
Call it library theocracy, baby.
Yeah. We're all performing to some degree now, it feels like.
Yes. And now get back to our earlier conversation. That's from a couple weeks ago. That's my guy. I'm spacing on his name. The sincerity, like authenticity, prolificity, like that's our definition of self. Like is our profiles. Right? Like,
yeah. 100%.
We're moving in that direction. Yeah. Right. I guess I don't have much more to add. I'm just kind of really agreeing with you. Like that at least that is a possible fear. At least the one that I think we're heading on that trend, that direction right now, but one I don't think is going to sustain long term. I think that will crack at some point. Basically.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I'm still optimistic about that cracking process. Like it could very much be, again, I take it back to the idea of like an egg cracking, which is a more mythological than a birth even.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I have a positive view long term, right? Everyone reads like some of my work and they're like, this is very negative. This is very like depressing. And I'm like, okay, yes, I'm sorry. I do not have a negative view, or sorry, I have a very negative view of the short term. I am sorry. Yes, because I view our society as at least spiritually, if not everything else collapsing, kind of like step by step. But I do think that eventually, once the thing collapses, then you can build something new, and that's more positive and interesting and exciting. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If I think, I mean, it's again not a moral judgment. Um but it's hard not to make it sound like a moral judgment. But from my point of view, if I were to focus on the idea that the short term was going to be hazardous, then I would almost fall into the doomer category myself. Like, the only reason I am so bullish about AGI and think acceleration into it is the right path is because I'm like 99.99% sure it's going to be positive. Like, if I was really 80-20, this is what pisses me off about the whole numerical assignment too, is like the people who are saying there's a 20% chance AI is going to destroy the world can't be conceptualizing what that really means. Like, if you told them that there was a 20% chance that they were going to put a bullet through their head or win $1 million, 2080, somebody's giving them that, they're never choosing the bullet. They're never choosing that option. It's like they're not conceptualizing it.
I love P-dooms. I love it when people.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
See, because then
it's so stupid. What's the probability? It's so dumb.
I made a formula of this. Like, so P-doom equals eschatology times ego divided by understanding.
Yeah, I like that.
So this is my formula. So like, so your P-doom is higher if your eschatology is higher, right? If you believe that there's an end result to the universe or whatever, then that will increase it. So then it's also directly proportional with your ego, right? If you think that you have a better understanding of truth and you understand reality, then Bukowski style, right? That you think you've recursively deductive everything to know about the universe, right? That increases your P-doom.
He is kind of like your arch villain, huh? Yeah.
No, because he's too funny. But like, and then it's inversely proportional to understanding that your actual understanding about what is happening. So this is why I like P-doom, because then whenever anyone posts their P-doom or whatever, then I go and apply the formula to it, and I try to make shit up and be like what the calculation comes out to.
Well, okay, yeah, that is the thing that is alluring about P-doom, is it gives you such an easy, like, it's a gamified version of AI doom scenarios basically. But what does it say about me that I have a 0.0001? How does that fit into your formula?
Yeah, I have to think about it. All right, so eschatology. You do have a pretty sort of eschatology, abundance, and all that. Like, I don't. Would you call that eschatology? Like,
my idea of eschatology, I'm not sure how to classify that. Yeah, I do have a place I think it's going, but it's not like an end state. It's not like it's more recursive or asymptotical self-improvement is where I think we're going. That's a perfect description.
So,
like you mentioned,
a very narrow boundary between something that's real and something that's eschatology. Like, well, okay, I guess so. The eschatology is would be, do you think we're going to achieve like a final state where everything's all relatively set, and either for good or bad?
Yes, but I think that state itself is a dissolution of the idea of like a temporal reality. Like, that's what I would call divine unification once we reach that state. So, yes, there is a termination, but it is as much coming down into the world as it is us improving it. So we will never be able to reach that asymptote, but I think that asymptote can reach up to us. So, did you even say that in those same words? Like, I feel like we're just...
Yeah, basically, but we're trying to talk about like eschatology. So like, I don't know how to assign you an eschatology. Like, that, you're very close to being like, this is an eschatology, like this is not. So I don't know.
I think what's happening is according to a divine plan. If that's
I will say I will grant you a very low ego. I think that is like pretty safe, and like
I'm tricking you on that. I have a very high ego.
Well, okay, all right. Just give you an example. Like, so my last one. In fact, I'm going to retweet this because it was like 2 months ago. It's fine. All right. So I did it for on Lear and Shapiro. Carl Feynman went on, gave his P of Doom, whatever, right? And it was
Uh-huh.
43%. Like just completely made up number, right? And so
The
Carl
three
Feynman,
that they have the audacity to throw a three in there. It's like
well,
it's
so
really higher than 22%. Is it? There's a meaningful difference. God damn it!
I don't know,
That's
man. Like
hilarious.
he's like 42, but like his eschatology was kind of interesting that he, his eschatology that we were gonna get squeezed to death. So that multiple super talented AIs will gradually squeeze humans out of relevance, meaning like robots, like literally physically, like robots will build robots, factories, mining until we're crammed into smaller and smaller spaces. We just die. We don't have places to live anymore.
It's like a
Which
trash
I was like, all
compactor.
right, I haven't heard that one before, so I think I gave him a pretty high eschatology for that one.
That's
Right?
interesting. If you
I
get
was like,
squeezed out
I was
by the
like,
robots, you want to be on the side of the robots that's mostly sex bots. You don't want to be crushed to death by the.
no, it was like literally physically, like the robots will just literally physically take over all the space, so we just won't have space left. And I was like, okay,
They can't build a second level. Like we can't get skyscrapers or something. Come on.
I don't know, man, but that was just funny. So then, all right, ego is hilariously easy. This is gonna be high. He's Feynman's son, so like that's just come on, like you're the son of like one of the most egoistic guys like in history. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have an ego. Right?
What do you think about Fenny, man? Do you have Feynman, whatever? Do you have a
You're looking
opinion on
at
him?
the whole. I don't. That's a whole other thing. All right. Um. So then, and then his understanding. Okay. So there's a couple components to his understanding, like actual understanding what's going on. First, I gave him negative points because he's famous son again, right? So that just kind of the ego of being famous sons of being the son of a very famous quote unquote smart person or whatever, right? Like that's going to inflate your attitude, right? Plus, he's an ex AI researcher, so I gave him negative points for that.
Really?
Yeah, like for a while actually. Like
Wow, interesting.
yeah, like long term, like that. That's why I think his view is so different. It's kind of more like an old school kind of eschatological view, right? Like, yeah, he's an AI engineer for like 30, 40 years or something.
Wow.
So, anyways, I gave him negative points for that, right? Because you're in the career for that long, it's gonna mess you up, right?
Mm.
Oh, and then also, and I gave him more negative points because he knows Zukowski. So, right? So,
This is a more subjective measurement than I thought.
oh, that's the point. This is why it's so much fun. So then it's like,
no, it's good.
yeah, I'm just filling in the gaps, right? So, yeah, so whatever, the math checked out is the end of the story. Feynman in particular, I don't know. I don't really have that much to say about him. Like, I haven't really studied him that close or anything. I'm not a science guy. I just
Yeah.
he's one of those people like Carl Sagan that I just kind of see his posts every now and then, and they just kind of annoy me. So like people like repost whatever his sayings are on Twitter or whatever, and they're usually just kind of annoying. So I'm biased against him.
Damn, Carl Sagan catching strays.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Carl Sagan.
That's interesting. I like Sagan. I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson, his somewhat
Well, it's
successor.
kind of a little bit like that. Right? Again, I am not saying Carl Sagan was a bad person. Like I am saying a lot of like the kind of the stuff he said is just I don't know led to like kind of like enclosures and that kind of stuff. Like and nihilism. And basically, like he was all science, right? I don't like it because he wasn't spiritual at all, right? Like it's completely. I don't. He was one of those people that basically says faith is irrational completely, and I'm just never gonna like that. Basically.
Yeah, I sympathize with him a little bit in that I think faith is supernatural. Like the natural description can't be applied to faith. And
What I don't like is the implication that just because you're religious, that means you're irrational. And Sagan was very much like one of those like straight, hardcore, edgy kind of atheist people that religion is like, the corruption of everything. Like in society, that it's all bad. It's only been a universally negative thing. And to me, that's just like that's nonsensical. Like to me, that is like literally a nonsensical statement because like humans are naturally religious. You can't be like you can't segment it into religious and non-religious. And so he's crusading against nothing to support his viewpoint, to support his religious viewpoint of science being the end of everything, basically.
Yeah. I wonder if he had lived through the past however many decades, if he would have changed his view now that we're in 2025, or if he would still be holding on to that.
Yeah, because like he died relatively young, right? Like so
When was it?
it's
It was like
possible.
the 90s, early 90s or something.
Yeah, I think so. Um,
Yeah, he had some kind of cancer or something. I don't know. Not bothered
yeah,
enough to look it up, but I wonder. It does seem like Christopher Hitchens.
yeah,
It almost seems like Christopher Hitchens pieced out so he wouldn't have to deal with the fallout.
totally possible.
He wouldn't have to be confronted with the incorrectness of his wonderful flowery language. But
Yeah, and he's, as you might guess, like he's my least favorite because like he is
I loved Hitch. He was so
because he's the most,
flowery.
because he's the most persuasive and like
'Cause he was the drunkest. He was always drinking.
he was like of those like kind of new atheist guys. Like he was the one that was like I think made like the best arguments, right?
He was the most
Me,
morally clear in a lot of ways.
right? And so to me, that like kind of made him like kind of almost more like almost deified is the wrong word, like worshipped, like in that kind of sense, like and sort of completed like kind of the full like denunciation of religion as completely irrational.
Even to the point where he said, if I claim to have converted on my deathbed, no, it was a lie. It's like, dude, that's a really strong statement. Like, especially from any kind of religious angle, that's like, what are
Well,
you
you
saying
know what
here?
that you know what that is. You know what I would say. That is a religious statement. That is a secular religious statement. It's like
100%.
that is an
100%.
absolute faithful statement. That is not logic. Like that is you were
Like,
saying
what
you
if
are
he actually
100.
heard a really good argument 5 minutes before he died? Like, it's seeding his rationality. It's self-sacrificing his own rationality to some
Yeah,
degree.
it's that, and the statement in itself is a thing that like okay, you could never change. It's 100% going to happen. That's not a logical statement. That is a faith-driven statement, and I'm not saying that's even bad. I'm saying it's bad that he wasn't aware of that.
Christopher Hitchens isn't a eternalist. He doesn't think you can lose your anti-salvation.
I don't know him that well. I'm not going to dig too deeply into his views.
I mean, he
But
was. It's interesting because, like, his primary objective to religion is morality, is moral. And we've largely seen, I think Hitchens probably would have reformed his views given what we've seen. I think he would have
maybe because,
recognized the
like,
necessity of it.
he was reacting against all the evangelicalists and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah, which
I have
was
just as
intense
negative,
and
I
overblown.
have just as negative views of them, right?
Amen.
Like, right? Because, like, I think they're the ones who made a mockery of religion, right? Like, that
Yeah.
like actual like true like embodied religion, right? They're the one that made it be ridiculous that it could be mocked by quote unquote more rational people.
Yeah. We don't need to
So
go down this rabbit hole, but
no, we don't.
watching the Charlie Kirk funeral made me think of evangelical church services that I've attended.
It's not exactly the same, but it's
I mean, I've literally been to conferences where they've like fired off indoor fireworks as they're talking about the death of Jesus. It's like
right because like yeah, they had the one fireworks like at his funeral, and I think they were like, oh yeah, these are just normal for TPUSA. It's like
we couldn't
okay,
not do the
that
fireworks.
doesn't mean we should do them.
We got $10,000 of good fireworks over here. It's
Yeah.
like we're not gonna do them just because it's his funeral.
The one that always gets me is when you do like God, country, and guns. That
Yeah.
one always gets me because it's like, yeah, no shit, but like I mean to add that in there is kind of it's just kind of hilarious. I don't know. I
It
never get it.
sounds like
And
a
this is a
threat.
guy that owns a shit ton of guns. I own a shit ton of them.
It definitely sounds
But
like a threat.
it's just like, yeah. Yeah, like why advertise?
Yeah, exactly. It's like if whatever you want to have right to bear arms, heckle them and stuff. Like okay, principle, I
Yeah.
agree with you, but like, why do you feel the need to market it like every single second of your day?
Yes. Yes. And then it's like also to put it up there with God is like, are you kidding me?
Right, and call yourself a Christian, like, because like yeah, like
Yes.
oh yeah, bro, Jesus would have been running around with his truck, shooting off his gun in the back. Yeah.
It's just like now the whole country thing is like okay, whatever. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna argue there, but to put it up there with God, I'm like, it just never, I never understood it.
Yeah. I mean, it is in some sense the end of the Protestant project, which I am a Catholic, but I'm not saying this derogatorily. Just like once you lose a center point, there's numerous divisions that happen. The Lutherans split off from the Calvinists. The Calvinists become the Presbyterians, and a bunch of like. There's just constant division. There's constant new branches forming because you don't have a center. You're going to glom on to the only center you can find, which is culture. So the evangelicals tried to become the cultural. They tried to fit the culture, and eventually that just turned into self mockery, just like the whatever with TV.
That's another situation where I would fully agree with you, except just extended that it's because of the machine, right? Protestant religion was born out of the machine, the printing press, right? And that's what caused it to become decentralized, right? And as we've developed more and more technology, then Protestantism just continues to splinter and splinter and keep splintering, right?
Yeah.
And AI is the latest form of that. Like now, Protestants can interpret Christianity individually, like as literal individuals, right? They can ask AI,
Personally.
"What did this Bible?" Yes, personally, like what did this Bible verse mean, or whatever, instead of going to a priest or whatever.
Well,
Right?
even beyond that, it's telling some of them that they're Jesus. It's telling some of them that
Okay.
they're the chosen one, you know?
Yeah, the LLM prophets, maybe my favorite.
I mean, when you talk about being chosen, you're basically saying you're a Christ, you know? That's all Christ means is to anoint, to choose, to be selected.
Yep. And it's like, yes, you were selected by
Sam Altman. To pay him $20 a month for that roller coaster.
Right. And so that's why again, like, yeah, I like Protestantism is literally you're describing what I think is like the shift of Protestantism to being like Christianity to like a machine faith that literally machine worshiping faith. Like, and I mean that very literally.
Well, so then we can extend it even farther and we can say that the grossness of evangelicalism that drove us into not just the grossness in terms of aesthetics, but like the grossness of some of the ethical decisions, like the God Country Guns thing, like the total buy-in to some of the most wasteful wars in American history, at least in terms of dollars. Thank God, not in terms of lives. But Iraq and Afghanistan, how immediately Christians condone not only that, but things like torture. And then you have the atheists coming in right behind them saying, you know, this isn't moral. Abandon this, ye of little faith. And then we're leading right into building the AI sand gods. If we didn't have that disillusionment with religion, might society have actually had the foundation to put a brake on AI development, like we put a brake on cloning when we were a more religious nation?
Well, you basically just summarized my entire thesis. So, like, I agree with you.
The system. That's the thing is like it is, I think, well, man, that's not true. That's a very totalitizing viewpoint. I was going to say that when other people agree with you, it's because you're both seeing the same realities, but obviously every cult member thinks that too. So
Yeah. It's a tricky boundary to walk for sure.
yeah. But there is like the explanatory power of the idea. And in some ways it's also cheating, admittedly, because you're just saying like, it's not an explanation so much as it is just a description. But I think you can make predictions off of it in that, exactly like you said, the machine worship sessions are coming. Don't worship them.
Right. And I completely agree with what you're saying about yeah, it did not start with AI, like for sure. Like with the earlier generations and evangelical stuff. Yeah, they absolutely do worship in technology and like in certain ways. But that's what the big, whatever they're called, the mass thing, big church things, like whatever they're called, mega churches.
Yeah.
Right. Like wherever the main guy is plastered all over gigantic televisions.
It's celebrity. Yeah, it's very gross.
Yeah, it's celebrity, and yes, technology worship in like in that kind of sense, right? And so yeah, like AI is just kind of like a culmination of that, and you see that and how like again, I think I've told you this before, but from my perspective, it seems that like Protestant pastors are far more willing to, you know, incorporate AI like into their like sermons or to use AI to help them or whatever, right?
Mm.
Like,
I'm doing a talk to a conference, a workshop of pastors at the end of October, and I'm trying to decide how to approach that.
Protestant, Catholic, mix, Orthodox, like
I'm a
depends on your
mix.
audience, man.
Yeah,
Mix.
there's no
Stuff.
definitive denomination. It's organized through like a local Catholic university, but it's non-denominational.
Yeah, how they should actually use it is pretty hard. Like I'm not again, you know, as you can tell, I'm not anti that they shouldn't use it, right? But you have to know the effects, especially of interpreting like religious text, of handing off interpretation of that to the machine, right? That, like that's there are benefits and trade offs to that, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, there, and it's a narrow boundary, right? 'Cause, like, should you prompt 4.0 for your sermon for the day? No, like, that's a pretty obvious one,
I
right?
don't
Like,
know. I don't know. Well,
well, I know it happens.
partially I say I don't know because one thing that the guy who's organizing it said is that some of them are already using it for that. And
Oh, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Are you? So what? You should say that? Oh, I don't know.
well, but there's also this idea, like I remember one pastor I grew up with telling a story about how when he was a fresh pastor at the church, he got nervous, and so he just took the sermon of some famous Presbyterian minister from like 300 years ago and, updated the language but presented it as his own. And after the first service, one of the parishioners comes up, and again, this is the Presbyterian, so they are more into like tradition and theology over updates. And the lady says to him, that was one of the worst sermons I ever heard in my life. So it's like, if you can take the words of an established figure within the tradition and not credit them, and I don't know, is that any different?
Is it different? I mean, in the sense that what I would mean that like no, because like in both situations, what you're doing is like yeah, you're not constructing an authentic sermon, right? You're not speaking from the heart, and that's always going to resonate with the flock, you know, to a certain extent,
I
right?
agree with that. There is something icky about, especially if the sermon presents like spiritual topics. There is something inauthentic about presenting it uh, just as a
Right.
pass through.
So yeah, so it's like you know, just to make it more concrete, you know, if you're a pastor trying to address your flock after you know what happened to Charlie Kirk, right? Like if you go to 4.0 and be like 4.0, tell me how the Bible would interpret Charlie Kirk's like death. Tell me how to tell my flock about that. Yeah, this is probably not ideal, you know, but like, but I would say it'd probably be okay to like for it to be like, hey, suggest some verses that are maybe relevant to this situation, right? Just to get me kind of started, right? You
Yeah.
know, it just depends on how you use the technology, right? Like if you're just like literally just obeying whatever it says, then you just it'll be very obvious to people if you're just repeating what the machine says, like literally, right? Like, and it's not going to be real. It's not authentic, right? It's a tough boundary to walk, right? So so are you literally presenting like
Yeah,
this thing?
I'm doing like just a 1 hour presentation for them on like frameworks for how to approach it. But I'm not sure what to say about the sermon stuff. It's just so easy to do. Is part of it. Is like, oh, he might have gone. Well, gentlemen, I think I might actually be closing down the space soon. Anyway, it seems kismet. But thanks y'all for joining. Sean Dirty, if you can hear me.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me too, man. It was fun just catching up, listening to you guys, man. So I'll try and keep an eye out for you guys.
Oh yeah, dude, stop by anytime. We do this every Sunday, so happy to see you whenever. Thanks for the for getting in touch and contributing. Yo, Brian, I was just saying I'm probably gonna hit the hay. Can I let you up to say goodnight? If you can hear me.
Not even joking. Cat stepped on my feet.
Oh, God bless. Cats know when it's time to go to bed. I'll give them that. But yeah, I was just saying I'm probably gonna end the space and hit the hay. But great talking with you as always, man. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay, but real quick, like, what are you presenting on? Just real quick. We don't have to talk about it.
Oh yeah. Part of it is gonna be practical, so I'm showing them. It's like an hour-long thing, and the first half of it is gonna be like, what are the tools that you could build day to day? What are some of the workflows that this could handle? You know, everything from like vibe coding a retirement calculator with them to
Oh wow, so that's not preaching. You're doing almost like everything. Like you're more like training them like on how to use this stuff. Anything else?
I'm not sure. So it's during like a retreat. Like the university has a nonprofit internally, and they sponsor like these retreat sessions for some of the local clergy.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much I'm going to dive into technical specifics, or I'm just going to like show and not tell so much. But then the second half is going to be more about like philosophical frameworks, how to approach the technology. And my general thesis I can just throw out, because I'd love to hear feedback tonight or another night, is that, well, it's actually a point that kind of builds on something Jonathan Pajot said. If you've seen his stuff, he talks about how like the first technology in the garden, or the first technology in the Bible, and part of the argument is like the first time something appears in the Bible actually tells you a lot about it. So there's this question of whether technology emerged with, like, I think you had said before, we talked about this, right?
Yeah. It was the clothing like in the garden. Like that's the first.
That was Pajot's point. Yeah. That the first technology was the clothing in the garden, whereas other people might say, I think you said it was Cain's rock, which was super interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, it counts. I think it's an interface. That's all I count technology as. But my point is going to be that the first technology was actually God speaking. That the whole origin of our universe is in some sense technology, which might be too much of like a simulation brained take for them.
That's pretty heavy for your classic religious.
We'll see. I want to get their feedback on it at the very least. I'm hopeful to.
That should be interesting.
They're like local pastors, so I'm hopeful to have like a longer term relationship with them.
Right. Yeah, I feel like you would get a very disparate reactions if based on Protestant, Catholicism, Orthodox, if they're all represented. And that would be fascinating.
It's interesting. I mean, the Pope just came out and said that there's never going to be an AI Pope.
I thought that. I was like, of course not. Of course not.
I don't know, dude. There's already been AI confession booths. There's already been AI priests.
Oh, I believe.
I don't think any has given sacraments, but that would be. That might honestly be the last human job, is giving the sacrament. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, yeah. I guess AI president first, and then AI Pope, right?
Oh, bro, ASI president 2028. Yeah, we're only 3 years out, guys. Buckle up. We didn't get to the can you perform exorcisms on an LLM question.
Next time.
Yeah. Next time. I'll reveal the magical ritual then. But y'all have a great week. And God bless. Stay safe out there.